that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Saturday, the 9th of March. Today, pro-Palestinian demonstrations are set to go ahead, despite concerns from the counter-terrorism czar that London's become a no-go zone for Jews.
And this comes as the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee claims Israel is blocking aid getting into Gaza as the humanitarian crisis in the region worsens.
Elsewhere, Meghan Markle speaks out about the social media abuse that she received during her pregnancies. And the Princess of Wales's uncle claims that Harry and Meghan should be stripped of their titles.
And US President Joe Biden and Donald Trump are set to hold dueling rallies in Georgia over the weekend. We'll be looking ahead to that clash.
And the government is set to announce that criminals could be released from prison a month early to tackle the overcrowding crisis in jails. But of course, more people are worried that that could cause more disorder in our society.
And media mogul Rupert Murdoch gets engaged again at the age of 92. But how old is too old to get married these days?
Good morning. It was a demolition in the desert. Anthony Joshua showed ominous signs that he's returning to his best by knocking out Francis Ngannou in Riyadh. It's a big day of Six Nations and Premier League action. And in the cricket, England are facing down a bowling onslaught from India.
If you've got outdoor plans this weekend, it's not the best weather. There will be rain and showers around, but not everywhere will be wet all the time. Find the full details in the forecast coming up soon.
Well, a very good morning to you. I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Now, as you may know, I'm not a particular fan of Rupert Murdoch, but I defend his right to get married when the heck he likes. He's been married quite a few times, about 6 times or something, isn't it?
This would be a 6th. And there's that old chestnut. What attracted you to the multimillionaire Rupert Murdoch?
Yes, I know. But he must know that. He's a clever man. Yeah. He must know that part of his sex appeal is his money. But
do you think he has sex appeal? Not at all?
If you're asking me, I'm never going to say yes, am I? But you know, clearly he does. I mean, power does. Power's an aphrodisiac, isn't it? And a lot of women are very much attracted to power. And he's got that, and he's got money. And he probably, you know, he obviously loves, even at the age of 92 plus, he loves to have an attractive woman on his arm.
It's a chilling thought.
Chilling thought.
The thing that I always think about this is, what do the kids think? Because obviously he's got a few bob.
Yes.
And are they gold diggers, or is it genuine love?
It's Amanda Platel, the columnist in the Daily Mail, has written quite a sort of on-the-nose article about it today. And she said, you know, I'll bet you his kids, who some of whom are as old as the woman he's marrying, or very nearly as old. I think his eldest child is 2 years younger than the woman he's marrying now.
And that's a bit odd, isn't it?
Yeah, but before, previous wives have been younger than his children. I mean, that happens a lot, particularly with powerful rich men, I think. But they will be making sure that Dad gets a really good prenup. But I don't know whether they would have to advise him, because he's a clever man. As I said, he'll know that money will be part of the deal.
And they've got their own cash. You know, the Murdochs aren't without a few bob themselves.
No.
They've got very successful careers. But, as in the Succession show, there is that kind of avaricious streak of, oh, they're just trying to take Dad's money.
Yes, of course. But why shouldn't he? Isn't it better than being lonely? Why shouldn't he get married if he wants to, at any age? And I just wonder if you've got a story of anyone in your family that you might have thought they shouldn't be, you know, they shouldn't be getting into that sort of thing. They're old, and how dare an old person have a love life or anything like that. I wonder if it's ever come up in your family, or whether you have maybe found love in older age. And isn't it a gazillion times better than being on your own?
Yeah, you've got to be careful at his age, though. You might not make it through the wedding night.
He's done all right so far. Yeah. He's done all right so far. Apparently, he dumped. This is what the press say, and of course he knows a bit about the press. That he dumped Jerry Hall by email. Yeah, well, that's like Phil Collins was fax. Yes, that's right.
You know, sort of brutal and to the point. I guess when you're that powerful, it's just not a transaction.
And also, you've probably had an awful lot of arguments face to face, haven't you? And in the end, you've just had enough, and you send off a pretty brutal fax or email. Yeah, but it hasn't stopped him. He was engaged to somebody else just a few months ago, but that didn't last. The engagement itself didn't last long. But this lady, he's going to marry quite soon, I think. So there you are. Tell us what your thoughts are on marriage in later life and love in later life.
I think it's quite sweet in a way. I mean, you know,
I do.
He's got all the money in the world. He doesn't want for anything, but he wants love.
Yeah, he wants love. He wants a lovely lady on his arm, and he obviously still goes to these big do's, and I don't know, why not? If you've got it, flaunt it, I say. But no, on this occasion, I wish him well. I hope it lasts, at least for a while. Now, we've got plenty of very interesting and some very controversial things to be talking about today. As you will have heard, these pro-Palestinian demonstrations are going to go ahead today, it being Saturday, for the first time since that counter-terrorism czar, the man who advises the government on counter-terrorism things, well, he said yesterday, and it made all of the papers, all of the programmes yesterday, didn't it, that certain parts of London had become no-go areas for Jews.
Yeah, and that's Robert Simcox. He said that, and this protest follows accusations by the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee that Israel is also blocking aid into Gaza.
Yes, and then that comes as protest group Palestine Action spray and slash. If you're listening on the radio, it's an awful thing to see, actually, any painting being completely slashed to bits, spray painted. It was a painting of Lord Balfour. It happened at the University of Cambridge.
Yeah, it's a grotesque act of vandalism, and the group claims the piece symbolised the bloodshed of the Palestinian people since the Balfour Declaration in 1917.
Well, our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has been following the protests.
There are forces here at home trying to tear us apart, to advance a divisive, hateful ideological agenda. Don't let the extremists hijack your marches.
That was the Prime Minister's appeal last week. Today, another pro-Palestine march. Hundreds of thousands marching against a war 2,000 miles away in Gaza, with over 1,000 police officers on duty. The government's counter-extremism czar warns London is becoming a no-go area for Jews, saying the UK has a permissive environment for radicalisation. Since October the 7th, there's been dozens of marches across the UK, mostly pro-Palestine, some pro-Israel. Incidents of anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred have surged. Many are marching simply against the horrors unfolding in Gaza.
I feel helpless. I can't sleep at night. I'm watching this genocide, and I will do everything I can in my power to march against it. These marches have been peaceful. They've been full of dogs and children, and the people of London. I'm a Londoner. I've been living here all my life, and I'm actually proud of the people of London today.
But not everyone is so amenable. Dozens have been arrested, and policing the protests has cost some £25 million by the end of last year. The police are under pressure to get tougher.
You can freely criticise the actions of this government, or indeed any government. You cannot use that as an excuse to call for the eradication of a state or any kind of hatred or anti-Semitism. This week, I've met with senior police officers and made clear it is the public's expectation that they will not merely manage these protests, but police them. And I say this to the police: we will back you when you take action.
But without changes to legislation, GB News understands policing at today's march will be no different to before. And Met Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley is standing his ground.
We're obviously operating in a very challenging political environment where tensions remain high. We have to police the law as it is, not as others would wish it to be.
Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is unimpressed.
The police have operational independence. I think it's really unfortunate when politicians give the impression they can tell the police what to do. Look, if the Prime Minister is telling the police today which marches to allow, which marches to ban, what's to stop him tomorrow telling the police who to arrest, who to charge, who to prosecute? We don't live in North Korea, we don't live in Russia, we live in the UK. That being said, I'd encourage anybody getting in a protest to please be cognizant of the fact that you can say things that cause people real concern, real fear.
So another Saturday, another march. Until there's a genuine, lasting ceasefire in Gaza, there will be more. Catherine Forster, GB News.
Well, join us now is former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Charlie, welcome to the show. Here we are again, another Saturday, another march, but the public mood seems to be changing. Robert Simcox, the Home Affairs Independent Advisor on Extremism, is saying that these marches are becoming infected with extremists. Rishi Sunak seems to be asking for tougher policing. Sir Mark Rowley saying, well, leave us alone. Take the politics out of policing. No-go zones for Jewish people is what the conclusion is. And yet they're still going ahead.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think, look, you know, the whole point of the policing of the protests is to make sure that people do have the right to protest. You can protest peacefully. That is an underlying right that we have in this country, something that we always, I think, sometimes take for granted, because you can't do that in many other countries in the world.
In many of the other countries that they happen to be supporting, which is ironic.
Exactly. But you've got to make sure that everybody in the United Kingdom feels as safe as they possibly can. And when you hear weekend after weekend chants of jihad or chants or seeing banners or posters or seeing people as part of these protest groups tearing down hostage posters of those that are still hostage to the terrorist organisation Hamas, it stokes tensions. It doesn't sort of reduce those conflicts within the UK. So you've got to make sure that people that are on these protests are protesting peacefully to make sure that London can be, or any other city centre for that matter, can be as safe as it possibly can be for anyone of any creed, any religion, any colour, any sexual orientation, anything like that. So the police do need to get tougher, I think, on those that are not protesting peacefully or in the spirit of what the protests should be, and that's what the Prime Minister was asking for last week.
Yeah, I mean, the freedom that we enjoy in this country to protest is, if you like, up to the politicians. The way you police it to make sure they are abiding by the law is up to the police. And the politicians keep stressing that, don't they? It's not our job to ban this or ban that. It is up to the police to police it. And Rishi Sunak was very adamant that, you know, if you want to take action, he said to the police, we will support you. I just wonder if those words are going to make a difference.
Well, we'll have to find out later on today, I suppose. But I think it's the consistency, the level of policing consistency that people want in this country, where you see police officers. We saw some videos on social media, I think last week or the week before, sort of, you know, confronting people that were, I think, just religious activists outside a church preaching, you know, God, Christians preaching God, where the police might have taken a heavy-handed approach compared to some of the chanting that you see on the streets on a Saturday night, where they just let those protesters walk on by. So it's the element of consistency that I think people want when it comes to policing. But ultimately, you've got to make sure, everybody in the United Kingdom or anyone in London or any other city centre where there's a protest taking place, that people feel safe. And if it's not the case, then the police need to, I think, step in.
Well, the issue is the police have the power to enforce, but do they have the will to enforce. Now, that Wednesday, when they were projecting those images onto Big Ben, I went into that protest. It was on my way home. I was at the Westminster studio, and I could see the projector very clearly. I said to the police, that's an offence. You need a licence to do that, because I know the law. What are you going to do? Go and arrest them. They had no interest. They were throwing eggs at me. They had no interest in doing anything about it. They were throwing fluids. Could have been anything. They had no interest. I was saying to the police, that guy's got balaclava. That's now illegal. Go and arrest him. They had no interest. The police stand off on these protests, and yet I went on the Armistice Day protest and they waded in with batons. I think we have two-tiered policing, and that's self-evident. What do you think, Charlie?
Well, I think certainly projecting on the House of Parliament. I mean, this isn't any old public building. This is the House of Parliament, you know, where they were. The projection was from the river to the sea. Now there'll be lots of people that come on, you know, shows like this and say that has so many different meanings. But the reality is, it is an offensive term to the Jewish community. Yes. Therefore, the idea that it was allowed or continued to be allowed to be sort of plastered across Parliament was wrong. The police should have stepped in on that matter, and I think that's what led to events last week or the week before of Lee Anderson saying what he said, which obviously generated conversation much across the country. But you've got to make sure that when protests take place, that they are policed appropriately. That actually
I think it's as you said, consistently,
exactly, and that they are effective. And the reality is that these protests have been going on weekend after weekend. Have they achieved what the pro-Palestinian protesters want to see? Who knows? Possibly. Who knows? But I think what you have to try and recognise, what the Home Secretary was saying, is that, look, this costs a lot of money to the taxpayer as well.
$1 million so far.
And you have to look at the actions of what the government is doing. And I think the UK government under Lord Cameron, you know, whatever you think of David Cameron, actually, he's probably gone further than any other politician, probably further than any other Labour politician, to try and bring peace and stability in that area. It's the UK government that is taking action to try and get aid into Gaza. That's something that everybody wants to see. Do we need to have protests on the street weekend after weekend to try and achieve something that the government is effectively already doing?
You can't ban it. If those people want it, they have a right to it.
Well, they banned it in Germany, they banned it in France.
Yeah, but we don't want to be seen to be... I mean, isn't that the problem? The police don't want to be seen to be acting like a police state. They're very, very wary of how it makes them look. But action's got to be taken sooner or later, hasn't it? Anyway, well, we'd love to know your views on that. gbviews@gbnews.com, as usual.
Yeah, thank you very much. Charlie Rowley.
Yeah, now, Meghan has been vociferous again. Well, it was International Women's Day, and last night she joined a panel discussion on women's representation in entertainment and the media.
Yeah, Meghan Markle told the panel she was cyberbullied while pregnant with Archie and Lilibet.
Yeah, which is quite...
The bulk of the bullying and abuse that I was experiencing in social media and online was when I was pregnant with Archie and with Lily and with a newborn with each of them. And you just think about that and to really wrap your head around why people would be so hateful. It's not catty, it's cruel. Why you would do that, and certainly when you're pregnant or you have a newborn, we all, as moms, you know it's such a tender and sacred time.
It's horrible to hear, no matter what you think of her, I think. On the other hand, I can't help think, why is she engaging with it? Why would she read it while she was pregnant? This all comes, of course, after news yesterday, we were talking about it, that she is actually looking for a PR guru here in Britain to relaunch her status in the UK. And
let's have... OK, and we're joined now...
We've got Grant Harold, I think we're going to meet. Former royal butler, of course, who's seen the cutting edge of this sort of unkindness. A very good morning to you, Grant.
Good morning, Anne. Good morning, Martin.
Do you know, this makes me think, I can't help wondering, if Princess Diana had been around in this sort of social media age, how she would have coped.
That's extraordinary, and I honestly was thinking the exact same thing when I watched that clip, because I was thinking back then, she would have obviously got, if she was on social media, she would have got the positive and I'm sure the negative. And again, how would she have coped? How does anyone cope? You know, millions of people sadly get this online bullying. I mean, as you know, I do a lot on social media and sometimes I get attacked. So it happens all the time. But I also agree with what you said, Anne. It's interesting that she was reading and engaging, because I think a lot of members of the royal family do not go on social media for that very reason. So they don't see all these kind of negative comments, because there is positive, but there's always negative.
Can I ask you, Grant, it's interesting, it came out that most abuse not only happened while she was pregnant, but most abuse was from other women, which I thought was quite telling on International Women's Day. But do you think this permanently taking the position of woe betide me, I'm the victim, my life is so difficult, is the best strategy if she's looking to get a new PR guru to help her get more public sympathy? Do people really want this pearl-clutching, permanently offended person in their lives, or do they rather want a strong, independent princess who rises above it?
I think this is the thing, isn't it? You know, the public, this is just my feeling from what I can see, is I don't think people really like it. I think, you know, whether, as you said, people like or hate her, you know, that everyone's got their own opinion, which is fantastic. But, you know, sometimes you think maybe you should be rising above it. And can I say, if you look at Catherine, the Princess of Wales, I think we all agree that, once again, she never kind of puts her foot wrong. It doesn't mean to say that she's not on social media. I honestly don't know. She could be on social media. But again, she doesn't she doesn't kind of comment about it, she doesn't kind of talk about it. And I think this is the thing, you know, that again, this is why I think the late Queen and the King don't engage in this kind of thing, because they don't want to get involved in it. And that's probably not a bad thing to do. But also, obviously, they're no longer working members of the royal family, but they are young royals, and social media is a big part of going forward. And I noticed that the royal family, they do use social media a lot to promote what goes on behind the scenes, which is fantastic. It gives people an insight into a world that only people like myself ever got to really see at one time.
Yes, it bites you back, doesn't it? It's interesting that actually even Kensington Palace, I think, the staff there have been so upset by some of the terrible things that have been said, for instance, about Princess Catherine and about what may be ailing her, that they actually put out a statement saying, enough, can you just stop it? Stop all this speculation. So even if Princess Catherine herself isn't reading it, her staff are, and it's clearly getting to them.
And her friends, you know, her parents, her sister, her brother, because her brother obviously does social media, you know, they'll be aware of it. And I'm sure they're kind of saying to her, unhappy about it. And do you know, whatever's going on, you know, the last thing she needs to be thinking about is what's going on social media. And do you know, the other thing is, Anne, I remember when I worked for them, she was always very, and William, they love their privacy, quite rightly, and it's something that they've tried to hold on to as long as they can. But now, obviously, they are the Prince and Princess of Wales. We are interested. The public want to know, and I don't think it's so much want to know. Well, I suppose they do want to know a lot what goes on behind the scenes, but I think they just want to make sure that she's okay. And I think there's a very fine line between giving us that information and kind of going too far that it can invade in their privacy. I think that's the problem.
Don't you think, Grant, a better role model would be one who said, just delete all your apps. Just don't look at social media. Don't feed the troll. Just rise above this and be a bigger person.
Absolutely. Just take time. I think most social media apps now let you take time out. So if it really is that upsetting, which I've done it, a few other people have done it, it's sometimes a good idea. It's also healthy. Sometimes just take a little break from it and actually just get back into the real world. But as social media is developing and all this other technology, I think it's going to become more and more tricky to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it just illustrates, though, doesn't it, the sort of very difficult role that Harry and Meghan have forged for themselves. Yeah. If you're Princess Catherine, if you're the king, you don't need social media to be who you are. You have that status already. But Harry and Meghan have to make their own living now, and their social media profile is money to them, isn't it? So they have to engage
absolutely.
with it, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the call, you know, I think the thing about social media is it does raise your profile. It does put you out there. There's no question about it. And as you said, if you're a senior member of the royal family, you don't need that. But if you are doing what they're doing, you know, celebrity roles, as I call them, they have to kind of keep themselves relevant. They have to, I suppose, be kind of seen. And one of the ways of doing that is because social media has got an extraordinary reach. And, you know, it's a great way to kind of get things out there, but again, it can come back on you. It can go badly as well if you if you do read a lot of these comments, which we all do. It can obviously affect you. I have no doubt it can affect your mental health as well, reading negative comments, and it can be a horrible world. It can be a horrible world, social media.
Are you on it?
I am.
So you're aware of the good and bad of it.
100%. I mean, sometimes I put posts up and it's extraordinary and they're seen by millions. I mean, one of my posts I think was about 10 million recently, and the comments were terrifying. But what was interesting, Anne Martin, was the comment. It was actually about the King's health. It was when he obviously announced the cancer diagnosis, and I just put a support. You know, obviously just as a former battler, just saying I wished him the best and supported him. The comments were extraordinary. There was tens of thousands of comments, and the things that people were saying was unbelievable, and there was fighting going on it. I've just walked away from it. I'm not even looking at it. And again, this is why I think it can go badly wrong, because if that was a post, say, about myself or a family member, and people were getting involved, which has happened in the past, they can be quite nasty. I think the thing about social media is the people that comment, they can almost hide behind this kind of invisible curtain. You know, they can say what they want, and they're not really, you know, they can have an invisible profile, can't they? So this is the problem. This is where it can be, and it can be upsetting. So I think is what I do is I post, and then sometimes I read the comments, but other times if it gets a little bit negative, I think not going to go there, and I think that's the best way to deal with it.
Okay, Grant Harrow, we have to leave it there. Grant Harrow, thank you very much for joining us.
I wonder if one day we'll look back, 20 years, 30 years time, and say, "Oh, that was the age of social media, wasn't it terrible? Glad it's over."
Just don't look at the comments. That's what I do. I get abuse all the time. Just don't have a look at them.
But why be on it if you're not going to look at it?
Because you want to project yourself out, but you don't respond or read it. Just project and just go into transmission mode. That's it.
Okay. Wise words, probably. Anyway, let us know. It's a very weird position that the royals are now in, I think, at the moment. But particularly Harry and Meghan, who are sort of half royal and half not. That's the role they chose, though, I suppose. It's 6:23. Shall we have a look at some of the other news stories coming into the newsroom at the moment?
And voting has finished in Ireland on proposed changes to their constitution. If approved, it would see references to a woman's role and duties in the home deleted, extend protections to unmarried families, and oblige the state to support family carers. The Irish constitution can only be changed with the approval of Irish citizens through a national vote.
The number of nurses in England planning on leaving the country to work abroad has risen fourfold in 6 years. The Royal College of Nursing says that over 10,000 certificates were issued last year as the NHS struggles with staff retainment. The Royal College of Nursing General Secretary has said that low pay and poor working conditions are driving chronic workforce shortages.
And in a unique celebration of love, a couple have tied the knot on board a train. Leah and Vince Smith, who first met on a train in 2016, shared their first kiss on a train and commuted by train throughout their relationship. So where better to celebrate their entire wedding than on another train from London Paddington to Swansea. The ceremony unfolded with 14 guests, traditional vows and a 3-course meal in the dining car.
Talking about love and marriage quite a lot today, aren't we? Because Rupert Murdoch, at the age of 92, has become engaged again. And if this does go through to a wedding, because the last engagement didn't, it would be his 6th, we reckon, don't we?
Yeah, I think he probably won't do it on a train.
You never know. One of his weddings he did on his yacht. If you have a yacht, that's where you do your wedding, I suppose. Shall we talk about primary season in America? Because all of the... it's getting sorted... It's building already, isn't it? Even though the election isn't till November.
November the 5th, yeah. Bonfire.
Is it November the 5th?
It is. Fireworks, indeed. Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway, the primary season is almost over, and it seems the country is bracing itself for a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump for the big White House job.
Yeah, the rivals are set to take part in a dueling rally in Georgia over the weekend.
But as the internal campaigning season draws to a close, how will each candidate pivot themselves for re-election?
Well, let's ask former advisor to Clinton and Bush administration, Steve Gill. Steve, always a pleasure to have you on the show. So here we go, heading for a straight rematch of the last time around. 2 very different candidates, though, and all eyes were on Joe Biden this week. An extraordinary State of the Union speech where he just blasted Donald Trump for the entire performance.
Yeah, I've told people I haven't been yelled at like that since I showed up an hour late from curfew back at my parents' house when I was in high school and hit the mailbox as I was pulling into the driveway. I felt like I was back in that same position. It was interesting. He was showing fiery, he was showing passion. And people may have gone from wondering about his cognitive skills to whether his temperament fits being president. But then he was out on the campaign trail again today, and it was the same sort of bumbling Joe saying things that were, incoherent. So I think they were able to kind of rev him up for one night, but now he's back to the same old Joe.
Yeah, his performance was extraordinary, actually, because he looked more lively than he has done in the last few months. But Trump has already answered back, hasn't he? He's made fun of him with various videos that have been gone through some sort of a weird app. It's going to be quite a venomous fight this time, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think even more bitter and brutal than we've probably ever seen in American politics. You know, the interesting thing is I think we're not going to see a lot more of Joe Biden. I think they're going to hide him like they did 4 years ago. I was with one of the former press secretaries, Ari Fleischer, the other day. He made the point that last time they hid Joe Biden in the basement. This time they're going to hide him in the basement of Camp David, and Camp David doesn't have a basement. On the other hand, they're going to be going after Donald Trump and let all the attacks on Donald Trump and his personality kind of be their guideline. And in my view, if this campaign ends up being about President Trump's personality, he loses. If he can make it about policy, if he can talk about what he did, what he's going to do, then he probably wins. The problem is Donald Trump likes making it all about him. So he's going to play right into the Biden hands unless he can really focus on policy and not let his personality be the driving force.
And Steve, Joe Biden talked about Trump, he talked about Gaza, he talked about Ukraine, he talked about trans issues, but he didn't talk about the big issue which seems to be dividing America right now, and that is the porous border to the south. How big a deal is immigration going to be in this election? And clearly you would think of the two candidates, Donald Trump is going to be the stronger of the two.
I think it will be the defining issue of the campaign. And when he did talk about the border, was kind of forced to talk about the young woman in Georgia who was murdered by an illegal alien, he not only offended the left by calling him an illegal, but then mispronounced her name and called her Lincoln Riley instead of Laken Riley. So, I mean, he really kind of heard it on both fronts. The reason immigration and the porous borders are so important is I think it covers a lot of issues. It covers community safety and crime. It covers the burden on our healthcare system when you've got 12, 15 million illegals that are pouring into our hospitals. It cuts into the economy issue of whether or not they're taking jobs away from Americans. It's a national security issue when we know that terrorists and spies are coming across the border. So while immigration is an issue people can see very clearly when you see people flooding across the border, it hits on so many other issues. And really, this issue is almost baked in at this point. Biden can't really do anything to turn the tide unless he did executive orders reversing everything he reversed the first day he was in office. And his left won't let him do that. So I don't think he can change that. And I think inflation is baked in, sort of like you're seeing in Britain as well. The economic situation is baked in at this point, and there's really not anything Rishi Sunak can do to change it before it gets to an election, whether it's spring or whether it's fall. At some point, the issues are baked in, and candidates really can't do anything to change the tone.
OK, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. We'll be talking about it at least for the next year, won't we? So look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Yeah, all of those issues very much baked into countries all over the world now.
Yeah, it's going to be an extraordinary election, one of the most venomous, hard-fought and highest-funded elections in the history of politics. And we'll have all of the coverage, of course, here on GB News. I just think it's going to be an amazing spectacle. Whatever you think of either candidate...
I think we'll end up hating everybody and all politicians, don't you?
With the greatest show on earth.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Greatest show on earth, really. 6:31 it is. Let's find out what the weather has in store.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast for GB News from the Met Office. It's going to be a dull weekend, a cold feel as well with brisk easterly winds and spells of rain or showers moving across the country. We start the day with a lot of cloud cover, outbreaks of rain moving through parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, into northern England, eventually eastern Scotland seeing showers carried into the east, and we're going to see outbreaks of rain also arriving into the eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Driest and brightest weather towards the southeast with some sunny spells, western Scotland as well. And after a chilly start, things will warm up a touch, although it will stay on the cold side in the east with the brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Into the evening, further spells of rain or showers, some heavy at times across the southwest as well as into Wales, northern England. And then the southeast gets a bit of a soaking as a band of persistent rain moves through, and that spreads across much of the east of the UK overnight, a few showers continuing further west. Of course, with the cloud and the rain and the breeze overnight, it's going to be mostly frost-free, although there will be a touch of frost across western Scotland where we do get some prolonged clear spells. But it's an unsettled start to the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover, spells of rain for many places, especially across Scotland, into much of England, East Wales and Northern Ireland. The brightest weather actually by the afternoon will be across the southwest, although still the potential for a few showers here. And it's going to feel cold, with temperatures in many places staying at 6 to 8 Celsius.
Right, well, there's your weather. Now it's time for the latest Great British Giveaway. And first, it was Phil from West Yorkshire. He was our first winner. Now we've got our latest, who's Charles from Stoke-on-Trent. He won £18,000 in cash. Here's the moment he found out.
Charles, I have some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
Oh, flipping heck. Oh, dear.
You've won £18,000.
Flipping heck. That's a big surprise. Flipping heck. I don't know what to say.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
I think he did pretty well. Let's say flipping egg.
Absolutely. I would say more than that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Anyway, let's see what you say if you win, because now's your chance to enter our latest Great British Giveaway and win 12,345 quid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in cash, and a whole host of other seasonal treats.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Yep, good luck indeed. 6:34. Aidan's here with the sport. What's coming up?
Well, there was a demolition in the desert last night, and Anthony Joshua accounted for Francis Ngannou inside 2 rounds with a devastating knockout, showing signs that he's heading back to his best. We'll also be looking ahead to a big day of Premier League action, and Ireland take on England at Twickenham. More after the break.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
6:37. I was just telling Martin about my holiday in Hawaii, which, as you say, you'd think you'd be all right weather-wise in Hawaii, wouldn't you?
Was it no good?
No, it was really
chucked
bad.
It down, or?
It chucked it down. The sea was going like that, and yeah. But it brought the whales out. There was one very successful whale watching day. So I did see lots of humpback whales. I was hoping to see one. We saw about 20.
You go surfing. It would have been good surfing weather.
No. The weather was bad. I mean, seriously bad.
Wow.
Rain, wind, cold, everything. The surf looked good if you could see it, but you couldn't actually see very far in front of your face.
You wanted that Aloha Hawaii tropical experience, and instead...
It wasn't quite. It was an experience, all right.
You were hanging on to your sunlight.
Anyway, thank you so much yesterday, because I was asking people for their bad holiday stories to cheer me up, and we had some real crackers, so thank you very much indeed. We were talking yesterday about the dust-up in the desert. That's the boxing. Aidan, it wasn't a dust-up, it was a disaster.
Disaster for Francis Ngannou, a demolition job for Anthony Joshua, proving that he's probably on that trajectory now, and I'm starting to believe that he's somewhere near his best. That was 4 wins now in 11 months. He's fighting quite regularly. They often say that when a fighter needs to kind of undergo a period of resurgence, then it's best to get them in the ring as often as possible. Nobody can say he's not been active with 4 fights in a year. That certainly puts some of his rivals to shame, given the regularity of their appearances in the ring. Nonetheless, Francis Ngannou, he's only his second fight as a boxer, because he's a UFC fighter. But
UFC?
Yeah, so he's a mixed martial arts. It's a slightly different discipline. You use your legs a bit more, you kick a bit more, and he's imperious in that kind of discipline. But crossing over into boxing is a different ball game. He did well against Tyson Fury last October, although, as we discussed in the break, didn't we? Tyson Fury was a little bit out of shape for that one. Wasn't really taking it seriously.
If a match like this, with all the build-up there was, ends in the second round with a knockout, what do the money men think, and what do the fans think?
Interesting, because over the years, yes, 20 years ago, it was a big problem, because it was just luck of the draw. You turn up, you can expect a fight to go the distance, but if it ends in the first round, as can happen quite often, then, yes, fans feel shortchanged. They're not paying small amounts of money for this, exactly. Especially now, and they're having to go across territories, the other side of the world, to watch these fights sometimes. So what they do now is they pack the undercard. They make sure that when you go to a match, you can see anything up to 10 fights. You go to the O2 to watch AJ. I used to cover it for my previous employers. I would have to get there. It would be an all-day thing, because the action would start.
Events.
Yeah, so the undercard carried on a little bit too long last night, so we were expecting a start of around about midnight. Didn't get going until 3:20 because the previous fights went on. So at least the punters can go away thinking, OK, we've seen some stuff. Now, what's interesting is that that's why some of these fights take so long to put together. It's not just about the main event, it's also about the undercard. Is there enough there to capture the attention of the public? And I think... generally speaking, the promoters are getting better and better at that.
Tyson Fury was looking on, and, of course, people want the Joshua-Fury match. But people haven't warmed to Anthony Joshua, have they? And was last night... I saw the fight. It was an impressive right jab, put him on his backside sharpish. Was it lucky?
I wouldn't say lucky, no. He looks very, very good. But also, I covered Anthony Joshua in the very early days of his career back in 2015. I was never convinced he was as good as everyone said he was. He was carefully managed by his promoters, carefully managed by the broadcasters, and then he kind of got found out, especially with Andy Ruiz 5 years ago in that first fight, where he was floored 4 times and given an absolute battering, to put it quite frankly. Tyson Fury then came up on the inside track, with everyone having written him off. So let's see what happens with Anthony Joshua going forward. I think this is as good a shape as I've seen him in a while, but I'm not getting carried away.
OK, we're going to leave sport there for the moment, but you'll be back in less than an hour, of course. But we've got to head to a break, because still to come, we've got the newspapers with Stephanie Tecci and Susan Holder.
Talk so much about the...
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Household energy bills will fall by £238 per year. Good news. An average of £20 a month. That's as Ofgem unveils its new energy price cap. So joining us in the studio is GB News economics and business editor Liam Halligan.
The Ofgem energy price cap, that's the regulated amount that energy suppliers are allowed to charge, will fall from £1,928 a year to £1,690. That's from April the 1st. That's a drop of about 12%. That should save the typical household 20 quid a month. Prices are cheaper than they were, but they're still very elevated by historic standards. Certainly if you're an American household, a French household, even a Spanish or an Italian household, you're paying a lot less for your electricity and your energy in general than you are here in the UK. The energy companies have been a bit tricksy with the government because while they are lowering the energy price cap and the headlines are, well, your energy bills are coming down, blah, 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 the energy providers have actually chiselled out from Ofgem the permission to charge households an extra £2.33 a month on average. And the energy companies say that is money which they need, the energy companies, in order to support households who have got big debts on their energy bills. I don't know about you, but whenever I talk to people down the pub about energy bills, many of them say, well, the energy company's got like £2,000 of my money and it won't give it back to me. What's going on here? So there are lots of concerns about customer balances with energy companies, and it's also worth saying that as part of this announcement, the bit that no one will notice is that the energy companies are being able to charge all households to try and flatter the energy companies' balance sheets, which to me, on first reading, seems a bit odd.
And it's time for the newspapers now. We've got Stephanie Tetchy with us. Lovely to see you.
Nice to see you.
And Susan Holder. Lovely to see you too.
Hello, hello.
Looking very Christmassy. You're wearing tartan.
Yes, I know. Everyone said that this morning, although you did accuse me of being a Bay City roller. So,
I did, yeah.
So, yes, either way.
Two things, but whatever. Shall we get on with the newspapers? Because there's lots to talk about today.
Yeah, Suze, let's kick off
start
this
with...
story. It's an amazing story, isn't it? This Hamza Yousaf in a row over £250,000 Gaza cash donation. What's going on?
Yes, so apparently he action for this to be sent at the point where his mother and father-in-law were trapped in Gaza, and then within days of this happening, his £250,000 donation being given to UNICEF and the United Nations agency, which provides humanitarian aid to children in Gaza. They were given safe passage out. Now, they're obviously saying there is no connection between the two, but they are accusing him of a conflict of interest. Yeah, I don't know. Having said all that, though, they were due to... I mean, it isn't just on his say-so. They're kind of making out it's all to do with him only. But his advisors were actually suggesting that they were going to give between £100,000 and £200,000 anyway. Yeah. And he just went, let's just go for the 250 and do it. Yeah. So, actually, are we arguing over something kind of... It's being made to look like he's just gone in there and done this. But actually, there was a whole team behind him who were advising that. Yeah. But the fact that some of this is going to things that support Hamas is obviously the big question.
Yes, but a lot of countries which did withdraw their funding for UNRWA are now considering funding them again because they're the only people helping.
It's how you get the aid in, isn't it? And you could quibble over the semantics, but actually if aid needs to get in...
And while we quibble with the highest of ideals, there are people terribly starving now, and I think nearly everybody accepts and understands that something's got to be done.
And you have to ask, what is £50,000 more? You know, with all this disaster that's going on out there, it's like he was given a recommendation of 100,000 to 200,000, so it's not like he's gone £1 million more. You know, he's got bigger fish to fry. So,
but there are two clear points there. The first one being that the Israeli Defence Force has said that this lot, you know, have been directly employing people who were involved in the October the 7th pogrom. So there's a clear political link. And then I wonder if there's also an issue about the fact today we're seeing a huge rally in Glasgow supporting the pro-Palestine side. And if the First Minister is sending £250,000 to them, what does that say to the public? Because we know we're already facing a massive policing issue. If the First Minister is on the side of the protesters, what do the coppers do?
Well, I guess he would like to think that he's not actually funding Hamas. He's probably done it as a goodwill gesture. He's thinking about the people in Gaza right now who have no place to live, no food, no water. So I don't think he sees it as he is funding terrorism. And with these things as well, it's hard to trace where this money is actually landing. So you just have to believe that it is going to a goodwill
Well, we've
cause.
already said that we're going to support the US in their mission to create this offshore sort of aid place, like a pontoon or something, isn't it? And maybe that will be the answer. Who knows? Who knows how long this is awfulness is going to go on for. Stephanie, you've been looking at The Times, which covers these two amazing mums of Barney and Grace. They were the two students who were murdered in Nottingham.
Yeah, that horrendous Nottingham attack. And these two mothers have given out their first interview and they just said that they've lost total faith in the justice system because the man who killed them, Valdo Calcone, he didn't actually have to face a murder trial due to him pleading that he had severe mental health and that he had paranoid schizophrenia, and where they're saying actually the evidence showed that he did have moments of lucidity to plan this attack. He was off his medication, but then also they're questioning the police and their investigation in this. You know, they had a WhatsApp group where they were sharing these awful remarks about their children's stab wounds. And you just think, you know, number one, no parent should ever have to lose their child in this way, but if it does happen, you want to think that the police are on your side
and would show you some respect.
And then it questions about these kind of cases, because you see it time and time again when these attacks happen, and then the person, the criminal, will then plead mental health and they won't have to stand trial. And, you know, it's a really black and white area, but I do think it needs to be looked at.
Well, the thing about this case, I mean, I'm from Nottingham. The third killing happened on the road behind where I grew up.
Right.
Like, it's really moved the city.
You were there that day, weren't you?
Well,
Did you go up there that day?
A friend of mine took the footage of Kalakana being arrested,
right.
and we showed it on GB News. I got very emotional.
We had the best coverage of that,
did, yeah.
thanks to your hard work.
Thank you. And Barnaby's mother in particular has been extraordinary throughout this. The victim impact statement she gave when the trial came to... The true justice was not served today. We've been let down by multiple agencies. We were presented with the fait accompli to accept manslaughter. We trusted in our system, foolishly as it turns out. It was premeditated. He knew it was wrong, but he did it anyway. This has been a trial by doctors, an incredibly moving situation, and now they're saying they have no faith in the system. Suze, they have every right to have no faith.
Of course they do. I mean, yeah, there was CCTV footage of him hanging around for a very long time. It wasn't sort of done on an absolute impulse, was it? There was a lot of kind of stalking going on. But it's the WhatsApp group messages for me. What is going on where police officers are taking photographs of crime scenes, are sending messages? Now, I've worked in newsrooms for a very long time, and there is a black humour that you can kind of adopt in a newsroom situation where people kind of, you know, can make jokes about things sometimes just to get kind of... Because you do have a lot of material coming through, and there is that kind of culture. But there are moments where something like... I mean, I'm just thinking back off the top of my head to something like the James Bulger case. Your newsroom goes silent.
Yes.
Everybody is choked up. You know, when you get to a point where people are desensitised so much, which is what we seem to be seeing with the police force, I can't understand where that's coming from, why those people are not suitable to be police officers. And if a family have come across something like that, how you would cope with that. And of course you're not going to have faith in those people or in the system when that's going on. It's an absolute disgrace, and we need to be able to stamp that out, and we need to retrain and make... I mean, I can't understand that you actually have to explain to somebody that that's not suitable. It's just ridiculous.
Now, there's extraordinary detail in this case. You know, because he's in a hospital and not in prison, he can claim benefits. He claims benefits while he's in Nick. He gets paid pocket money by taxpayers, and it will already cost a huge amount of money to keep him in there.
And these two mothers also say that the CPS they weren't honest with them. They let them think, naturally, and assume, I suppose, that he would be charged with murder.
Too difficult a conversation to have.
He was not charged with murder. What I find extraordinary is the other people who he tried to kill, you know, by ramming them, but he didn't kill them. He was charged with attempted murder for them, but the people he actually did murder, he was... What's the reasoning behind that?
Is it an easy win? Is it an easier one to get across the line? I don't understand it.
But it needs serious investigation.
So will he be detained in this hospital for life?
So they're looking at it again now. They want to reassess the fact that if he's proven, if he does something wrong in a hospital environment, could he be put into a traditional prison? But the fact of the matter is, the cat's out of the bag now. He escaped justice in the eyes of the families, in the eyes of the victims, and it leaves this bitter taste in the mouth that we have a justice system which actually seems to favour the aggressors and not those who've been oppressed.
But all power to those mothers for being able to just kind of do what they're doing. It is astonishing, and they deserve every credit.
But where's the Home Secretary? I'm just trying to remember. Who's our Home Secretary at the moment?
Well, it's Cleverly.
Right. Where is he in this, then? Why isn't he storming in and saying, something's got to be done now? Maybe, you know... nullify the trial, have another trial, make it a murder trial. Do something decisive instead of dithering on the sidelines.
Because they don't want to be seen that the politicians have primacy of law. That's why...
But that's why the Home Secretary is there, and occasionally in the past, Home Secretaries have intervened.
You need a steer, don't you? You need a steer when things are so obviously, everyone's scared of saying the wrong thing all the time, and somebody needs to take a stand.
Also, it makes a mockery of people who do have mental health.
Yes,
this is why it's such a sensitive topic, because there are people who've got paranoid schizophrenia who haven't killed anyone. So if someone like him says he's got it, how far can you really push the boat?
And there's clear evidence he travelled to London the day before and he went to a known gangster's house at a drug party. So here's a guy that seems to have premeditated. Clearly, that's what the parents believe. He was out there taking drugs at parties, and yet it wasn't premeditated. So many questions, but you've got to salute the families for fighting on and on and on. Suze, another story that's a huge dividing point, and that is people taking elective operations in private hospitals, particularly since lockdowns. What's the story?
Yes, so apparently it's increased quite a lot. So in 2023, 10% of elective procedures, such as hip replacements, were going out to private operators. And it's kind of shot up to almost 50% since before COVID, according to the Independent Healthcare Providers Network.
Sorry, just to make this clear, the NHS is paying
for
private operations.
That is what's happening.
In private hospitals.
That is what's
and that's
happening.
now gone up to something like 50%.
Yeah, so there's reams of statistics, but it has increased. And then there's other things like in Birmingham and also Surrey, there's actually partnerships where they're building new facilities now that are kind of bridging so that you can use both facilities. I'm kind of conflicted on this in a way, because obviously we don't want anything in it to be costing more money than it needs to in the NHS currently, because that's not a good thing. All money needs to be kind of spent very, very wisely. But I do think this is the future of how we blend the NHS and also those private setups and take the burden off. The one thing to kind of note, though, is the note of caution. Safety risks, according to the Director of Health and Public Interest think tank, has brought this up. But I think it is a fair point that if you do have any kind of elective surgery, and anything goes wrong, where are they going to send you? The NHS. Because that's where, I remember asking when I was pregnant, going, should I go private to have my baby? I asked that question. I didn't. I had it in the NHS hospital. And they went, well, you can if you want, but if anything goes wrong, you need an incubator, or anything goes wrong with you, you're only going to end up in the NHS anyway. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course I am. So, and it was just a thought.
Thank God for that.
Yeah, thank God for that. Yeah, exactly. So if you go, I had somebody, a friend of mine had an operation, and they unfortunately perforated her bowel during the procedure. And where did she end up? In the NHS, because that's where all the emergency care is. So elective surgery. But I think a judicial use of it is a way forward. It just needs to be done as cost effectively as possible. Which possibly
Steph, got a quick 40 seconds, Steph.
Meghan, of course, now she's International Women's Day yesterday. She used it to voice about the hateful cyber bullying she experienced while she was pregnant with Archie and Lilibet. And I'm not surprised, to be honest, because, Meghan has been one of the most talked about women on the planet, and, she divides opinion. But I think it's quite interesting that she's actually been going through such comments and taking it on, because most people know if you want to protect your mental health,
don't engage with it.
Do not go on
social media.
We'll talk
more about this later, because I think I'm absolutely fascinated by that. Should she be engaging with social media? Maybe she has to, because that's how she makes her money nowadays. Anyway, we've got lots more to talk about in the next hour. Don't go away.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast for GB News from the Met Office. It's going to be a dull weekend, a cold feel as well, with brisk easterly winds and spells of rain or showers moving across the country. We start the day with a lot of cloud cover, outbreaks of rain moving through parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, into northern England, eventually eastern Scotland seeing showers carried into the east, and we're going to see outbreaks of rain also arriving into the eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Driest and brightest weather towards the southeast with some sunny spells, western Scotland as well. And after a chilly start, things will warm up a touch, although it will stay on the cold side in the east with the brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Into the evening, further spells of rain or showers, some heavy at times across the southwest as well as into Wales, northern England. And then the southeast gets a bit of a soaking as a band of persistent rain moves through, and that spreads across much of the east of the UK overnight, a few showers continuing further west. Of course, with the cloud and the rain and the breeze overnight, it's going to be mostly frost-free, although there will be a touch of frost across western Scotland where we do get some prolonged clear spells. But it's an unsettled start to the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover, spells of rain for many places, especially across Scotland, into much of England, East Wales and Northern Ireland. The brightest weather actually by the afternoon will be across the southwest, although still the potential for a few showers here. And it's going to feel cold with temperatures in many places staying at 6 to 8 Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Saturday the 9th of March. Today, pro-Palestinian demonstrations are going to go ahead, despite concerns from the man who advises the government on counter-terrorism. He said yesterday, didn't he, that London had become a no-go zone for Jews. Catherine Forster will bring us the latest.
Yes, another Saturday, another large pro-Palestine march here in London and in Glasgow. I'll bring you more shortly and throughout the day, live on GB News.
And don't forget, Catherine has been on those marches since the very start, an absolute trooper. And this comes as the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee claims Israel is blocking aid getting into Gaza as the humanitarian crisis in the region deepens.
In other news, Meghan has spoken out about the social media abuse that she received during her pregnancies. And the Princess of Wales's uncle has said that Harry and Meghan should be stripped of their titles.
And US President Joe Biden and Donald Trump are set to hold dueling rallies in Georgia over the weekend, hopefully without pistols. And we'll be looking ahead to that clash.
The government is going to announce that criminals could be released from prison a month early to tackle the overcrowding crisis in jails. But could that lead to more disorder on our streets?
And media mogul Rupert Murdoch gets engaged again at the grand old age of 92. But how old is too old to get married?
Good morning. It's perhaps the biggest game in world football. Liverpool host Manchester City at Anfield tomorrow. Both managers have been speaking ahead of that one. We'll also look ahead to England v Ireland in the Six Nations at Twickenham, and the end is nigh for England in the cricket on day 3 of the 5th Test in India.
If you've got outdoor plans this weekend, it's not the best weather. There will be rain and showers around, but not everywhere will be wet all the time. Find the full details in the forecast coming up soon.
Well, it's good to be with you. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm not Stephen Dixon, I'm Martin Daubney. And this is Breakfast on GB News.
We don't know who we are anymore, actually. It's interesting, we were talking earlier, about an hour ago, about the fact that Rupert Murdoch is getting engaged. He's 92. If this one, the last engagement fell through after a couple of months, but this one, if it goes through to marriage, will be his 6th, which is interesting. He's 92. I think she's something like 65.
Yeah, spring chicken in comparison.
Yeah, but we were asking, you know, I'm not a great lover of Rupert Murdoch, as most people know, but I do defend his right to find love at whatever age. Isn't it better than going into old age lonely? I mean, I'm not saying that everybody on their own is lonely. Some people like being on their own. But rather than being lonely, isn't it nicer to just seek a bit of romance?
Yeah, and there is that old chestnut, of course, we mentioned in the last hour. You know, what attracted you to multi-millionaire Rupert Murdoch? That might be a bit harsh, but he's got a taste for it. He likes being with somebody.
He likes to have a beautiful woman on his arm. I think there's no doubt about that. And he's a clever man. He'll know that part of his amazing attraction is that he is very wealthy. But I'm sure he has very sensible prenups on all of his later marriages.
Well, his kids
he first got married in 1957. That's how long he's been at the marriage game, isn't it? So we were asking you, I mean, has it ever happened in your family? Finding love later in life, or maybe wishing you had? Paul says, morning, Paul. When I was 22, I was in a relationship with a woman who was 50. There's quite an age difference. Yeah. We stayed together for 5 years, and we've stayed good friends ever since. She ended the relationship, saying that I should find someone to have a family with. Sadly, I never did.
Obviously still plucks the heartstrings to this day, Paul. Keith adds this. Keith says, Janet, the love of my life, passed away after 52 years of marriage, age 76. I was then 74 and I'm now 81. I could not bear the thoughts of being with anyone else in marriage or not. Keith, that's so sweet.
It is. It's lovely. But, as I say, isn't it better maybe... If that's the way you want to do things, to seek love, even in very much later life, better than feeling lonely. Love to know if it's ever happened to you and your family. Do get in touch. And stop being unkind about Meghan. I can't believe I'm defending Meghan, but she's been talking yesterday on International Women's Day about the fact that she was trolled so badly on social media, particularly during her pregnancies. Now, obviously, on the one hand, you might say she shouldn't have engaged with that sort of nonsense. On the other hand, why would we want to be quite so unkind? Why does social media turn us into horrors?
It's interesting how on International Women's Day it came out that most of the abuse she got was from other women. Which kind of puts to bed the fact that it's all sexist men. At least there's that to take from it.
Women can be very hard on other women. Yeah. It can be. But stop doing it, I think. Why not? Anyway, let's talk about the big issue of the day, and that's the pro-Palestinian demonstrations, which are going to go ahead today for the first time since the man who advises the government on counter-terrorism actually said that certain parts of London, in fact, he did say London, just London, had become a no-go zone for Jewish people.
Yeah, and this protest follows accusations by the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee that Israel is blocking aid into Gaza.
And that comes as the protest group Palestine Action sprayed and slashed an historic painting of Lord Balfour at the University of Cambridge.
And the group claims the piece symbolised the bloodshed of the Palestinian people since the Balfour Declaration in 1917.
Well, our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has been following the protests, as you know.
There are forces here at home trying to tear us apart, to advance a divisive, hateful ideological agenda. Don't let the extremists hijack your marches.
That was the Prime Minister's appeal last week. Today, another pro-Palestine march. Hundreds of thousands marching against a war 2,000 miles away in Gaza, with over 1,000 police officers on duty. The government's counter-extremism czar warns London is becoming a no-go area for Jews, saying the UK has a permissive environment for radicalisation. Since October the 7th, there's been dozens of marches across the UK, mostly pro-Palestine, some pro-Israel. Incidents of anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred have surged. Many are marching simply against the horrors unfolding in Gaza.
I feel helpless. I can't sleep at night. I'm watching this genocide, and I will do everything I can in my power to march against it. These marches have been peaceful. They've been full of dogs and children, and the people of London. I'm a Londoner. I've been living here all my life, and I'm actually proud of the people of London today.
But not everyone is so amenable. Dozens have been arrested, and policing the protests has cost some £25 million by the end of last year. The police are under pressure to get tougher.
You can freely criticise the actions of this government, or indeed any government. You cannot use that as an excuse to call for the eradication of a state or any kind of hatred or anti-Semitism. This week, I've met with senior police officers and made clear it is the public's expectation that they will not merely manage these protests, but police them. And I say this to the police: we will back you when you take action.
But without changes to legislation, GB News understands policing at today's march will be no different to before. And Met Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley is standing his ground.
We're obviously operating in a very challenging political environment where tensions remain high. We have to police the law as it is, not as others would wish it to be.
Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is unimpressed.
The police have operational independence. I think it's really unfortunate when politicians give the impression they can tell the police what to do. Look, if the Prime Minister is telling the police today which marches to allow, which marches to ban, what's to stop him tomorrow telling the police who to arrest, who to charge, who to prosecute? We don't live in North Korea, we don't live in Russia, we live in the UK. That being said, I'd encourage anybody getting in a protest to please be cognizant of the fact that you can say things that cause people real concern, real fear.
So another Saturday, another march. Until there's a genuine, lasting ceasefire in Gaza, there will be more. Catherine Forster, GB News.
And I'm delighted to be joined by Catherine Forster in the studio now. Catherine, you've been on these marches since the very beginning. In fact, you've been heckled and got quite a bit of stick on those marches. They've been hugely divisive, and yet they still rumble on.
Yeah, they do, and here we go again. The first one was the Saturday following those atrocities on October the 7th. It was huge. I've been to many, many since. Yes, we had a run-in with protesters. The police are still pursuing that. I'm waiting to hear if they're going to be charged. But, you know, ultimately, until there is a ceasefire in Gaza, the figures from the Hamas-run health ministry are over 30,000 people died in Gaza. I really think, unless the government decide to ban protests, which is not going to happen, let's face it, these scenes are going to be replicated week after week after week. Now, you could say it's not achieving anything. Certainly, Benjamin Netanyahu, I don't think is really going to be heavily influenced by somebody slashing a painting or what people are chanting on the streets of London. But many people feel the need to make their voices heard. And when you see what's happening in Gaza, you can understand it. But I have to say, for the Jewish community, it's very, very difficult, because although that lady with the dog, there's many people like that, there's also plenty of people in the crowds chanting that from the river to the sea, which Jewish people feel is anti-Semitic, calling for the eradication of Israel, they feel. You can understand now why many Jewish people simply would not venture into central London or indeed potentially Glasgow. There's protests going on today. And that's a really very sad state of affairs, that this is where we are, with no prospect, I have to say, despite Rishi Sunak's tough words, of real change, because the police are saying we are doing what we can. This is the law as it stands. And so we have this week after week.
And I can't see those protesters being satisfied, even if there were some sort of ceasefire agreed, because it won't be the sort of ceasefire they want to see.
Well, I mean, any ceasefire would be welcome at the moment, wouldn't it? There was talk a couple of weeks ago. Well, I don't know. If the killing stops, if the aid... I mean, people are starving now. aid is not getting in. I understand why people are protesting, but some of the things that the police say, you might be arrested, covering your face, etc., anti-Semitic slogans, banners. There's been placards, there's been things that people have worn that have led to arrests, but there's been dozens of arrests. There's only been, I think, at the end of December, there was only about 36 people had been charged from all of these marches. And of course, what the government is what the police are saying is chanting from the river to the sea is not sufficient to be arrested.
OK, well, Catherine Force, I know you're going out again on the march today, aren't you? Make sure you stay safe out there. And to discuss this further, we're now joined in the studio by the former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and also political author Owen Bennett, I believe, joins us down the line. Let's start with you, Charlie. They roll on. Rishi Sunak gave an address outside Downing Street, an emergency address, imploring the police to take firmer action, and they were backing them up. But Sir Mark Rowley has said, no, he's not interested in doing that. We're doing it our way. And round we go. We have this impasse where people are now starting to feel that the protesters are being treated with kid gloves and they're becoming emboldened, and Jewish people certainly are feeling pretty afraid on the streets of London.
And we'll just have to wait and see what happens later on today to see whether the police do take action against those who are chanting things like jihad, or whether there are protests that are taking place that exceed the peaceful nature that they should be. On the back of what the Prime Minister said last week. But you're absolutely right. There will be a lot of tension today. There will be lots of people who still, part of the Jewish community, feel that they cannot come into central London because of these protests. I think I read somewhere last night that there is a counter-protest also today as well, so that will be even more difficult for the police to manage. But everybody that is on a protest today has to demonstrate restraint, I think, ensuring that you can have a peaceful protest, you get your message across, but you are not, obviously, there to incite hate, to chant hate speech, or to do anything other than protest for what we all want to see, which Catherine was saying earlier on, is the peace brought in Gaza.
Well, let's go to Owen Bennett now. Morning, Owen. I mean, what do you see as... I mean, could there ever be any likely and soon sort of resolution to this on the streets of London or Glasgow or anywhere?
Well, I think this is obviously in the hands of what's happening overseas, what's happening in Gaza with Israel. I think if there was a ceasefire, then maybe some of the kind of energy would be drawn out of it. But I think that the general point here is that, and I think, the lady in your clip with the dog, as was referred to by Catherine, she was saying she's effectively a peaceful protester, she's proud of people. But anyone who's ever been on any of these marches, whether it's calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, whether it's against tuition fees, whether it's against austerity, there is always a cohort, there is always a band of people there who just want to cause a bit of a ruckus. They're kind of just anti-establishment, they're slightly anarchistic in their views, and sometimes these marches can be co-opted by that. Sometimes you find that the tail does wag the dog in these situations. And it's how the police deal with those people who do cross over the line. I think that's certainly what Rishi Sunak was referring to, that more needs to be done at kind of that end. So it's not the 90% of people who do it peacefully, it's the 5 to 10% who go out because they are looking for trouble.
Can I quickly ask you, Owen, I've been on these marches, the police stand and watch. They've got no interest in removing those projectors that were putting images on Big Ben. They've got no interest in arresting people with balaclavas, which is now outlawed. They don't seem to care. On that basis, Owen, on the basis that we keep seeing arrests, we keep seeing hate crimes, is it time to ban these marches in the UK, as they have done in Germany and France?
I think it'd be very difficult to ban them, because I think in this country we do have this history of protest. Think back to the million people marching for Iraq, which was 20 years ago now. I think it'd be very difficult to ban them, and I think it would be completely counter-effective, because I think you'd get people coming out who perhaps weren't as interested or invested in the Gaza issue, but they might care about the right to protest. So it could actually exacerbate the situation.
Again, Charlie, you're desperate to get back in on this one.
Well, I just think it's absolutely right to demonstrate free speech in this country. That's one of our underpinning parts of our democracy, something that you don't have in any other part of the world. But you don't have a sense of entitlement. You cannot just turn up and preach whatever it is you want. You cannot just turn up to university and start slashing paintings. You cannot just turn up to decry our public buildings, to deface or to do whatever it is that you think to cause destruction and harm to ordinary working people's lives, or to put a Jewish community, or any other community for that matter, in harm's way, or where you're stoking tension. So absolutely we have a right to free speech in this country. We have a right to protest. But if you turn up with the ambition and the desire just to fuel the debate, to fuel the fear amongst communities, then that is something that should not be taking place on the streets of London or anywhere in the UK, and the police should take a tougher stance.
Great stuff, great debate, and of course we'll have much more on that throughout the show. Thanks for joining us, Charlie Rowley, Owen Bennett, and of course Catherine Forster.
Right, it's 17 minutes past 7. It was International Women's Day yesterday. And last night, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan, joined a panel discussion on women's representation in entertainment and the media.
Yeah, Meghan Markle told the panel she was cyberbullied while pregnant with Archie and Lilibet.
So we wondered a bit earlier on in the programme, what would be the thoughts of Grant Harold, the former royal butler? This is what he said.
Good morning, Anne. Good morning, Martin.
Do you know, this makes me think, I can't help wondering, if Princess Diana had been around in this sort of social media age, how she would have coped.
That's extraordinary, and I honestly was thinking the exact same thing when I watched that clip, because I was thinking back then, she would have obviously got, if she was on social media, she would have got the positive and I'm sure the negative. And again, how would she have coped? How does anyone cope? You know, millions of people sadly get this online bullying. I mean, as you know, I do a lot on social media, and sometimes I get attacked. So it happens all the time. But I also agree with what you said, Anne. It's interesting that she was reading and engaging, because I think a lot of members of the royal family do not go on social media for that very reason. So they don't see all these kind of negative comments, because there is positive, but there's always negative.
Can I ask you, Grant, it's interesting, it came out that most abuse not only happened while she was pregnant, but most abuse was from other women, which I thought was quite telling on International Women's Day. But do you think this permanently taking the position of woe betide me, I'm the victim, my life is so difficult, is the best strategy if she's looking to get a new PR guru to help her get more public sympathy? Do people really want this pearl-clutching, permanently offended person in their lives, or do they rather want a strong, independent princess who rises above it?
I think this is the thing, isn't it? You know, the public, this is just my feeling from what I can see, is I don't think people really like it. I think, you know, whether, as you said, people like or hate her, you know, that everyone's got their own opinion, which is fantastic. But, you know, sometimes you think maybe you should be rising above it. And can I say, if you look at Catherine, the Princess of Wales, I think we all agree that, once again, she never kind of puts her foot wrong. It doesn't mean to say that she's not on social media. I honestly don't know. She could be on social media. But again, she doesn't she doesn't kind of comment about it, she doesn't kind of talk about it. And I think this is the thing, you know, that, again, this is why I think the late Queen and the King don't engage in this kind of thing, because they don't want to get involved in it. And that's probably not a bad thing to do. But also, obviously, they're no longer working members of the royal family, but they are young royals, and social media is a big part of going forward. And I noticed that the royal family, they do use social media a lot to promote what goes on behind the scenes, which is fantastic. It gives people an insight into a world that only people like myself ever got to really see at one time.
Yes, it bites you back, doesn't it? It's interesting that actually even Kensington Palace, I think, the staff there have been so upset by some of the terrible things that have been said, for instance, about Princess Catherine and about what may be ailing her, that they actually put out a statement saying, enough, can you just stop it? Stop all this speculation. So even if Princess Catherine herself isn't reading it, her staff are, and it's clearly getting to them.
And her friends, you know, her parents, her sister, her brother, because her brother obviously does social media, you know, they'll be aware of it. And I'm sure they're kind of saying to her, unhappy about it. And do you know, whatever's going on, you know, the last thing she needs to be thinking about is what's going on social media. And do you know, the other thing is, Anne, I remember when I worked with them, she was always very, and William, they love their privacy quite rightly, and it's something that they've tried to hold on to as long as they can. But now, obviously, they are the Prince and Princess of Wales. We are interested. The public want to know, and I don't think it's so much want to know. Well, I suppose they do want to know a lot what goes on behind the scenes, but I think they just want to make sure that she's okay. And I think there's a very fine line between giving us that information and kind of going too far that it can invade in their privacy. I think that's the problem.
And thanks there to Grant Harold, who, as a former royal butler, now lives himself at Highgrove. It's fascinating, actually, thinking of how Princess Diana would have coped with social media, because she would have engaged with it as well. She really would have, and she would have got very, very upset at the good and bad things, I think, that were said about her. So how do you feel about Meghan and the fact that clearly, while she was pregnant, she was on social media, probably reading everything that was said about her and getting more and more upset because people have been very unkind? And I don't know why they felt the need to be quite so vicious.
Yeah, well, I think they believe that... I think it was the accusations of racism that tipped people over the edge, because, you know, on that day, millions and millions of Brits, you know, totally and utterly welcomed Meghan Markle into Britain, into the royal family. They thought of her as one of our own. There was not a scintilla of that. And then when it came out afterwards about the racism, I think people just thought, do you know what, this is too much to bear.
But I also think that her perception of the way she was received in Britain is totally coloured by her engagement with social media.
Yeah.
Because she says how terribly unkind the press were. And I think in some instances, maybe they were. But the people who were really unkind to her were the people she was talking about last night. The people who say vile and vicious things on social media because they can.
And what was interesting about that, she was talking about the fact she was the most trolled person in the world in 2019, and she was her most trolled when she was pregnant, and she got the most trolling from women, which I thought was fascinating.
She shouldn't have engaged with it. Yeah. Of course, a lot of people, thank you very much for getting in touch, are making the point that if President Trump gets in, Harry may well find himself deported back to Britain. So they have to make a life for themselves back in Britain.
And we've got loads of emails on that. We'll read a few of them out later on.
Should we catch up with the weather at 7:23?
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast for GB News from the Met Office. It's going to be a dull weekend, a cold feel as well with brisk easterly winds and spells of rain or showers moving across the country. We start the day with a lot of cloud cover, outbreaks of rain moving through parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, into northern England, eventually eastern Scotland seeing showers carried into the east, and we're going to see outbreaks of rain also arriving into the eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Driest and brightest weather towards the southeast with some sunny spells, western Scotland as well. And after a chilly start, things will warm up a touch, although it will stay on the cold side in the east with the brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Into the evening, further spells of rain or showers, some heavy at times across the southwest as well as into Wales, northern England. And then the southeast gets a bit of a soaking as a band of persistent rain moves through, and that spreads across much of the east of the UK overnight, a few showers continuing further west. Of course, with the cloud and the rain and the breeze overnight, it's going to be mostly frost-free, although there will be a touch of frost across western Scotland where we do get some prolonged clear spells. But it's an unsettled start to the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover, spells of rain for many places, especially across Scotland, into much of England, East Wales and Northern Ireland. The brightest weather actually by the afternoon will be across the southwest, although still the potential for a few showers here. And it's going to feel cold with temperatures in many places staying at 6 to 8 Celsius.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's time for our latest Great British giveaway. And first, it was Phil from West Yorkshire. And now we have our latest winner, and it's Charles from Stoke-on-Trent, who bagged 18 grand in cash. And here's the moment Charles found out that he'd won.
Charles, I have some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British giveaway.
Oh, flippy neck. Oh, dear.
You've won £18,000.
Flippy neck. That's a big surprise. Flippy neck. I don't know what to say.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm glad we are still a nation of people who say flippin' heck instead of something else. Anyway, here is your chance to enter our late Great British giveaway and win £12,345 in cash and a whole host of treats.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Great stuff. Get stuck in now. Should prisoners be released early to help with overcrowding in prisons? We'll be discussing that next. This is Breakfast on GB News with Martin and Anne.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school, and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true. I said, you know, you may adopt the church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind. For which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me. But I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing.
It's an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position?
Well, he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it. In a sense, I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess. Not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head. But you know, he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously through no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to Prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to Prevent for essentially teaching.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 7:30 exactly. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin and Anne.
Now, the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, is expected to announce that prisoners could be freed up to 35 days early to tackle overcrowding in our jails.
Well, that could include as many as 40,000 inmates. And those eligible for release would include, apparently, violent offenders and burglars. Great.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is the former police officer, Oliver Lawrence, who thinks we shouldn't release prisoners early. Welcome to the show, Oliver. Always a pleasure. So this is a proposal that's being mooted to tackle what is called acute and exceptional demand. Basically, jails are too packed and therefore we need to let cons out early. What's the downside?
Well, there's a huge downside. Good morning, Martin. Good morning, Anne. You know, the party of law and order strike again, you know, with this crazy announcement that we're going to be releasing these dangerous offenders that have committed burglary offences, serious theft offences and fraud offences up to 35 days earlier than they're supposed to. You know, prison is supposed to be a deterrent, but what deterrent is there if you're going to be released a lot earlier than what your sentence permits? And I think what this is just demonstrating to the public is the lack of investment by the government over the past 14 years, who've just had a light bulb moment and realised that they need to invest heavily in our prison capacity, which at the moment is bursting at the seams and really is going to place our communities in a far more vulnerable position.
But there's no doubt we do have an overcrowding problem, don't we? So releasing somebody a month early, is that really going to make much of a difference to them? Surely just, 30-odd days isn't going to make a difference to to the term they've already served.
Well, the case I would make for this is the impact that some of these offences have on victims. You know, if you're the victim of a burglary offence, those scars stay with you for many months and many years to recover from. And I would suspect the public would have a view that people that commit these horrendous offences need to spend the entirety of their sentence in custody so they understand the ramifications of their actions have serious consequences. By doing this, what we're showing to people again is that we're soft on law and order and we're soft on crime, allowing these people to come out much earlier. And this is only just the start of the situation. When we look at the significant backlog that we have within our court systems, I think this is just the first stage in probably what we'll see in far more early releases of other types of offences.
Yeah, and of course, Oliver, dumping these people out of Nick early will place increased pressure on an already under-strained probation service. So is the answer to build more prisons? The trouble is they come in about £140 million a pop.
Yeah, well, this has all come about because of a lack of inertia and resistance from the Treasury and from civil servants to invest over the last 10, 15 years in our prison population, in our prison services. And yes, they are expensive, and yes, there is a need for investment. But when we see the level of crime being committed on our streets across the United Kingdom, when we see people coming into this country who we have no idea who they are, those people eventually find their way, I have no doubt, some of them into police custody, which is going to put our probation services, as you quite rightly say, Martin, under an immense amount of pressure. Our policing services are doing their jobs in finding people, arresting them and putting them before the courts. We now need our prison services to step up and have the ability to ensure that those punishments can be served out and the community can have faith in the system and the support they'll get from it.
Is there any category of prisoner that might be suitable for this and that wouldn't present a danger to the public?
It's a very good question, Anne. I think when you look at the range of different offences which are being talked about, I suppose the low-level theft offences where there may not necessarily be a direct victim involved, maybe a shop stealing from a shop, but all of those have an impact on our communities. For me, this is a broad brush issue in terms of anybody that commits enough crime where the punishment deserves to be in custody. That's where they should be until we're able to rehabilitate them to whatever that looks like, to come back out and to be a productive member of society. So I think we've got to be cautious with that, but I'm sure there are some opportunities to divert people, particularly juveniles and younger people, away from the prison system.
OK, great stuff. Thanks for joining us, Oliver Lawrence. Also, you do an excellent podcast called Protect and Serve. Well worth checking out. Thanks for joining us. It's an interesting point about the cost of prisons. £140 million is a lot of money. We don't have a lot of money, but if you think about it, that's only about 10 days' worth of the money we spend on housing asylum seekers in hotels.
I know. We've got so many insoluble problems going on at the moment. Who would be a politician? And yet people want to be. People want to be Prime Minister. Still to come, sport. Aidan, what have you got for us?
There's plenty going on this weekend, and it's billed as perhaps the biggest game in world football. Liverpool face Manchester City at Anfield tomorrow. It's not quite a title decider, but it should go some way to telling us the destination of the Premier League title, though Arsenal are involved as well. We look ahead to the Six Nations, England hosting Ireland, and England are really struggling in India. We should have a result on that as well. More after the break.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Our woke army, a topic we talk about almost every day on this show. And now the decision to allow women to join frontline army fighting has been described as a failed exercise in political correctness, because government figures reveal that only 15 female recruits completed basic training for either infantry or tank units between January and September of 2023. A senior army officer says women are put off joining frontline units amid numerous allegations of rape and sexual discrimination. Well, joining me now is former NATO commander and Royal Navy officer Rear Admiral Chris Parry, CBE. Chris, always a pleasure to see you on the show. So here we are again, we're talking about diversity targets, and it seems that no matter how much they huff and they puff, young women simply aren't joining up.
Well, I mean, the life's not for everybody, Martin. It's not even for most men, to tell you the truth. This is a tough life, and it's a life that is geared towards the sort of physical and mental, I hesitate to say skills, but aptitudes that men have. You know, the idea that men and women are interchangeable in all these roles is ridiculous. What we need to have is all roles open to both men and women, and those that are suitable and have the aptitude for those jobs should be going into them. If we've got 15 women who are going into the infantry and the armoured corps, then that's fine. They're the ones that are suitable. It's as simple as that. Any idea that we should have quotas or any sort of percentage of people from certain ethnic groups or from women is ridiculous. We want the best people who serve our country and can defend it.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast this morning with Anne and Martin. It's 7:39, time for the sport, and Aidan McGee has joined us. Now, we covered the dust-up in the desert earlier.
Demolition in the desert.
Demolition in the desert, that's right, which is the boxing. Should we go straight into some football?
Why not, yeah. I mean, big weekend of Premier League action, and the stellar fixture, we're kind of looking at a day early, but it's well worth looking ahead to Liverpool v Manchester City at Anfield, because the two managers spoke yesterday. And although it's not the top two in terms of this is a title shootout, because Arsenal are well and truly involved. They've won the last 7 matches, of course, and they were looking imperious against Sheffield United the other night. They were falling up inside 15 minutes. But this tomorrow, I mean, Arsenal playing today, they could go top before this game even happens tomorrow. But this is still the two big sides involved in the title race, in my view. It's also the eminent managers' relationship or rivalry over the last 7-8 years or so. And Jurgen Klopp has been talking about what could possibly be his last duel against Pep Guardiola. And he was asked in the press conference whether they have a relationship off the pitch. And this was interesting. They said, and Klopp said, in terms of lunch or dinners, it never happened. And that's because we have to decide who pays.
But it is interesting to talk about that managerial confrontation because Klopp wants his Hollywood ending, he's bowing out, he wants to bag all of the trophies. There's no way Pep's going to sit around and light his cigar for him.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. I mean, look, City are going for a back-to-back trebles, which has never been done before, certainly within the context of the English games and as it applies to Europe. But Liverpool are going for an unprecedented quadruple. It wouldn't include the Champions League, of course, but it could include the Carabao Cup, which they won last week. It could include the FA Cup. It could include the Premier League and indeed the Europa League, which Liverpool have not won since, I think, 2001. So, yeah, it's all to play for. I don't think it's the last time they'd have played one another. I think Klopp just needs a break. I think he will come back to frontline domestic football. I think he's a little bit too young to bow just yet. But nonetheless, you know, this is interesting because in the last 30 matches, Martin, has always been the side it's always been the home team that prevailed. Only twice has the away team actually won. So, as I say, it's all to play for tomorrow. 62 points City are on, Liverpool are on 63. But, as I say, Arsenal could be ahead if they beat Brentford today at 5:30.
OK, just very briefly then, the rugby.
Yes, indeed. Again, Ireland, I think they should have won the World Cup before Christmas. Huge opportunity missed for them. They've won 11 Grand Slam matches, Six Nations matches in a row. They could make it 12 today. I think that could be a record, but they tend to struggle at Twickenham. England, Ireland have said in their press conference before, and Peter O'Mahony said, we're talking about a side that got to the semi-finals. They did better than us in the World Cup, but Ireland overwhelming favourites today. Scotland in action today as well. France tomorrow. So we should go, as I say, I think Ireland are favourites for this for a reason. And they did the really hard work beating France on opening weekend a month ago. And I expect them to complete the job today against England.
And hopefully next time, maybe we'll talk about Nottingham Forest. Hey, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure.
And do stick with us at 7:42. We'll take a quick break. Still to come, the world is going to watch the Miss World pageant, but not Britain. Why? We'll find out in a couple of moments.
Didn't know that.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Get this right, we all know by now, don't we, that so many NHS workers are abused by people that they're trying to help. We'll all agree that that is pretty damn disgraceful, but what do we do about it? Because now some London hospitals are looking at whether or not they should be able to ban people that do this for a year from those hospital facilities. Is that the way forward? Daniel, do you like this? No abuse, no excuse, that is the campaign?
There's no other choice for most people. It's either the NHS or nothing. And if you're going to take that monopolistic power, then you need, I think, you have responsibilities towards people. You can't cut them off. So there are ways in which, of course, you can bring criminal charges against them. If they committed a criminal offence, that's fine. They might even be locked up in jail. But what you can't do is cut off health services because you're the only supplier.
Well, yes, I think you can cut it off and you should cut it off. London is very different from everywhere else, and it goes back to a conversation about immigration. The majority of nurses in London are either African or Filipino, and it harks back to their nature and their culture. When you're younger, your parents look after you. When you're older, you look after them. They don't go into homes. So there's a way that a threshold of tolerance they have that is above and beyond most people. So, because I found like when I was younger, most of the nurses were white. Now they work in hospitals in Ascot and Somerset. London is the war zone. I have seen horrific things happen to nurses, and they stay, they show up for work. There's a protection they are owed, beyond owed. And if you abuse something that's offered to you as a part of your citizenship, there should be a penalty for that. For the same reason,
you're obliged to use it. There's no offer involved in the NHS.
But there is an offer, because at the end of the day, like you figure out how to get money and go private. So just because you've created something that gives you no, it's easy. If it's
that's
easy,
an impossible solution.
They've created something that's kind and easy and beneficial to all, indeed. But it's a good thing for all. Do not abuse it. That simple.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 7:45 is your time. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Martin and Anne.
And joining us to go through what's making the news in the papers, Stephanie Tecci and Susan Holder. And it's lovely to see you again. Right, we're kicking off, Susan, with the spread of AI in music. I bet you this is something that you talk about with your lovely husband.
Yes, yes, it is. It has been a topic of conversation.
Noddy, by the way.
Yes, Noddy Holder, he of Slade fame, where no AI, of course, was involved in any of that. No artificial intelligence.
But it could be now.
It could, well, it could be now, and it will be, and it could be in the future. I mean, I suppose, you know, you could have somebody approximating Slade music and bringing that out, and I'm sure that is kind of on the cards and being done. And this is why Guy Chambers, who is the songwriter known for working with Robbie Williams, has called it terrifying for the industry, really, because and it's actually saying that in future he thinks there'll have to be records will have to be stamped with a "this is an all-human record" label, so that you know no AI was involved and that you actually are buying something that was a product of someone's imagination, someone's talent, someone's skill, and not something that was computer generated. And although there's lots of things that it's great for, especially, I mean, in technical things, there's been huge advances in recording engineering and technical things. My son's a recording engineer and works in 360 surround sound. That's an amazing...
Wow.
I know. Don't ask me. I don't understand it, but that's what he does. And all that is great. It's kind of a new way of listening to music. It's kind of an immersive experience. So I'm not kind of a Luddite in that way, but at the same time, I do think you want humanity to be involved in a creative process. I also can't, you know, back in the day where we used to watch Tomorrow's World, surely they told us that computers were going to do all the boring things and free us up to be creative. And as a writer, why is Amazon now flooded with AI-generated books? And and it's really hard to get your own work out there. Why are we not doing the making music, making films, acting, writing? Those are the things we should be doing, not let the computers take over.
It's interesting, Steph. If you go on to YouTube, there are already astonishing kind of vocals of John Lennon singing David Bowie songs. There's Space Oddity, where Lennon sings it, and it actually really does sound and look like him doing it. So it's already happening. I guess the big worry, if you're a recording artist, is if you play someone's voice into some software, it emulates it, then you can put anything out you want. Without the artist, they lose all their rights and lose all their money.
Well, this is the scary thing, that there is no limit to what AI can do. As much as it sounds very like, ooh, I can hear John Lennon singing, you know, from years after he's passed away. But now I think it's time for creative industries now to really start looking at how they're going to police AI. If you're a music artist, if you're a writer, you work in film industry now, you now need to think about your career long into the future and make sure that it is protected. And we're not having these conversations because we still think, oh, what can AI do? But clearly it's showing it can be a real big threat.
You can't stop progress, though, in a way, can you?
But you must be able to stop. As an actor, you can't have people taking your image and putting you in a film that you didn't do and you weren't paid for.
Having said that, Tom Hanks spoke out about this.
Yes, he did.
And he actually said, I quite like the idea of an AI Tom Hanks acting after I've died.
Yes, well, that's just world domination, though, isn't it? That's just his ego.
Yes,
he wants to think he's going to still be making films. No one can stop him in 200 years. And in a way, maybe it doesn't matter in 200 years to him. But actually, it is really important that people are paid and given credit for what they do. And it's not just taken away.
Yes. I interviewed Aled Jones just a while ago, the singer, you remember, the Walking in the Air chorister, and he has recorded Walking in the Air with himself singing as an older person, singing alongside his chorister self. And I mean, clearly that's just something your son would understand.
Yes,
totally.
exactly,
That's music manipulation. But like you know, that is wonderful.
But they're real voices.
Brilliant.
I mean, there was a lot.
Yes, in both instances.
There was a lot of fuss
really
made about the latest Beatles record that came out that took John Lennon's voice and cleaned it up a bit so they could use it.
Yeah.
And there was talk about, it's an AI song, but it wasn't artificially John Lennon. It was originally John Lennon.
It was improved and enhanced, but it was actually the real human.
None of us have a problem with that. It's when it strays into recreating things. And also, it must be cheaper, mustn't it? Because you're not paying people. It's much cheaper to get a computer to do it. That doesn't mean that's the way we should go.
Right, Steph, let's move on to this story. This has really got people going earlier on in the week. This is the West End theatre performance where only black people are allowed in the audience. It's having another night.
Oh, Martin, I've been really thinking about this over the past, 2 weeks since this story came out. And now it's another West End play called Blue, which is about the shooting of a black motorist in the US. And it's going to be at the Seven Dials Playhouse in London. And they have decided that they'll have 2 blackout nights, which is going to be a majority of a black audience, because the producer's saying they're trying to shift the narrative that only white people go to theatres. And for me, I think this is very divisive. I think it will set a deadly precedent, because if the foot was on the other shoe and there was an all-white night, it would be absolutely controversial. People would be saying it's racism, and I think they're kind of getting it wrong here in terms of black theatre goers. If a play's good, black people are going to go. And I think
it's right to say we want more black people to go. I think they've just taken it too far, haven't they? Any form of segregation, this is bad. We do not want to go back to. You have to be one colour or another to sit in an audience. And also, if it's a play about the shooting of a black motorist in that's exactly the sort of thing a white audience probably should go.
Absolutely, it is. Yes.
And it was the same with the previous one. It was about the slave trade. That's the sort of thing you should say to white people: go and watch this.
Absolutely.
You're not allowed.
Yourselves, learn about this.
And I think it's quite sad, because I think in the UK we've done really well in terms of being a multicultural society. We have our hiccups here and there, but not to the extent where we're saying we're going to try to exclude white people from attending a place to make
such a
black
backward
people
step.
feel
I mean,
more
we were never that bad back in the 60s when our bands went over to America. It was the Beatles again who actually stood firm and went, we're not playing to segregated audience. What are you talking about? They weren't used to it, and they refused to do it, and they were big enough to kind of push a change through there. So if they were doing that then because it wasn't acceptable here, then why is it acceptable now? It really isn't.
All right, Susan, that's a neat segue into the next story. Controversial world performances indeed. Miss World.
Yes, did you know
controversial?
It was Miss World tonight? It's being held in Mumbai. I think it's tonight in Mumbai, and 120 countries will be broadcasting it. 1 billion people will be watching. You won't be able to see it here in the UK. We're not broadcasting it, and I don't know.
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, Carol Malone in The Express says it's because of, how does she put it, whinging feminists and gutless television executives. Carol Malone's words, not mine. Saying that, there's been a backlash against it, people saying it is sexist, that we're promoting kind of beauty above all else. Miss World will say, and this article of Carol Malone's is kind of claiming that it's beauty with brains, that our Miss England is an aerospace engineering graduate, Jessica Gagan, 27, and the opportunities that are afforded to the women who do it, the charity work they do, the fundraising it's done, tick, 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 there's all lots of positives there, but... And so I can see it from both points of view. I do think if it was on, it wouldn't bother me. Would I watch it? Probably not.
Anne, you've got to tell your story about Miss World.
Well, I presented Miss World in 1985 and from the Albert Hall. We got an audience of 88 million.
Oh, gosh.
Which is pretty good. It has to be the biggest live audience.
Only just a bit less this morning, Anne, really.
I hated every second of it. On behalf... I mean, I was treated well because I was the host.
What year was this, did you say?
85.
Right.
And... but I sat there and watched these girls, and the one who won, I think, was probably some sort of brain surgeon or something, but they always
Miss Iceland.
Yeah. Miss Iceland was it in those days. Gosh. But all I remember is seeing them being herded around like a herd of sheep, treated... I mean, so patronisingly by everybody seemed to be involved in the whole thing. I was asked to do it again, and I didn't do it the next year because I just thought it was disgusting. And I would never watch it No. And I don't think...
There isn't a...
They hide behind this illusion that everybody's a brain surgeon and they do want charity work, which they do. They do. The whole organisation generates charity money, but it's still judging people on the looks they were born with.
There isn't a swimsuit section anymore.
I love the glamour of it.
We have to leave it there, Steph, Suze.
glamour.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to you more in the next hour. But first, your weather with Aidan McGibbon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast for GB News from the Met Office. It's going to be a dull weekend, a cold feel as well with brisk easterly winds and spells of rain or showers moving across the country. We start the day with a lot of cloud cover, outbreaks of rain moving through parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, into northern England, eventually eastern Scotland seeing showers carried into the east, and we're going to see outbreaks of rain also arriving into the eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Driest and brightest weather towards the southeast with some sunny spells, western Scotland as well. And after a chilly start, things will warm up a touch, although it will stay on the cold side in the east with the brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Into the evening, further spells of rain or showers, some heavy at times across the southwest as well as into Wales, northern England. And then the southeast gets a bit of a soaking as a band of persistent rain moves through, and that spreads across much of the east of the UK overnight, a few showers continuing further west. Of course, with the cloud and the rain and the breeze overnight, it's going to be mostly frost-free, although there will be a touch of frost across western Scotland where we do get some prolonged clear spells. But it's an unsettled start to the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover, spells of rain for many places, especially across Scotland, into much of England, East Wales and Northern Ireland. The brightest weather actually by the afternoon will be across the southwest, although still the potential for a few showers here. And it's going to feel cold with temperatures in many places staying at 6 to 8 Celsius.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan Tonight. Weekends from 9 p.m.
Kinsey, great to have you back on the show. Now, listen, we're not slated to talk about the Prince Harry story, but I've kind of surprised a few people by suggesting that I think he should have armed royal protection when he's in Britain. What do you think?
Well, they aren't my tax dollars that are paying for Prince Harry's protection, but I agree with you. I think that he should feel safe, and he should feel safe to bring his family back to see his father, if that's the case.
Well, his stepmother, Kinsey, Queen Camilla, gets a well-deserved break. Tell me more.
That's right. Queen Camilla has no engagements on her agenda this week, with the Times reporting that she will spend a few days of downtime with the king. Camilla has been working overtime to support the monarchy. Just last month, she repeatedly drove over 6 hours to a royal engagement after her flight was grounded because she reportedly did not want to let down her husband. She will resume engagements on March 11th, representing the king and leading the royal family for the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey. A source told the Times, although she was not expecting to find herself in the position of leading the family, the Queen is absolutely prepared to do whatever needs to be done for the institution. And can I just say, speaking of Harry, I think the fact fact that Queen Camilla is seen as leading the family is significant proof that Prince Harry would not return to temporarily support the family, because Camilla's elevated position is likely not something sitting well with him right now. He loved Queen Elizabeth II. He likely resents the idea of Queen Camilla. And we know that that's a position he felt like his mother should be in.
Most definitely. He was very nasty about Queen Camilla in his book Spare.
He was. So I imagine that the idea of her leading the family is something he has a hard time digesting.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 9th of March. Today, pro-Palestinian demonstrations are set to go ahead, despite concerns from the counter-terrorism czar that London has become a no-go zone for Jewish people. Catherine Forster will bring us the latest.
Yes, Rishi Sunak appealed to protesters not to let extremists ruin the marches. Here we go again. Will people listen? Will it be any different? I'll bring you news throughout the day. I'll be following the marches.
Yeah, and this comes as the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee claims Israel is blocking aid getting into Gaza as the humanitarian crisis in the region deepens.
And elsewhere in the news, Meghan speaks out about the social media abuse she's received, particularly during her pregnancies. And, of course, the Princess of Wales's uncle claims that Harry and Meghan should actually be stripped of their titles.
Meanwhile, over the pond, US President Joe Biden and Donald Trump are set to hold dueling rallies in Georgia over the weekend. We'll be looking ahead to that epic clash.
And the government is going to announce that criminals could be released from prison a month early to tackle the overcrowding problem in jails. But could this lead to more disorder on our streets?
And media mogul Rupert Murdoch gets engaged once again at the grand old age of 92. But how old is too old to get married?
We have already shone a light on Anthony Joshua's demolition in the desert and the Premier League clash of the Titans at Anfield tomorrow. This hour, we'll be speaking to an England Rugby World Cup winner ahead of England v Ireland in the Six Nations at Twickenham later today.
If you've got outdoor plans this weekend, it's not the best weather. There will be rain and showers around, but not everywhere will be wet all the time. Find the full details in the forecast coming up soon.
Well, it's good to be with you at 8 o'clock this morning. I'm Anne Diamond.
And I'm Martin Daubney, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
"92, is that too old to get married again? I don't think so. I think if you found love, you should count your blessings.
Well, the last thing I want to do at 92 is get married. I just want to have a nap.
Well, I think there's more to... Well, it depends how you are and what sort of person you are. But Rupert Murdoch, clearly, and I think, as most people know, I'm not a fan, but I defend his right to seek happiness and romance at 92 if he thinks he's, fit and well.
He's maintained his sexual allure, hasn't he? No doubt the bank balance is a hefty help.
Yeah. But I also think he's clever enough to know that. And he still likes... He's the sort of man who likes to have a beautiful woman on his arm and a companion.
I reckon his kids would be going, oh, no, here we go again.
Yeah.
You know.
But he probably thinks now that there's more to life than arguing with your kids all the time. And also there's probably more to life than just doing business deals all the time. So he wants somebody to talk to. And I don't know, I just think it's... I think it's OK, don't you? I'd love to hear from you if you've had an instance of love in later life in your family. What's your story? Love to know. My mum was absolutely gorgeous and beautiful and very vibrant and vital at 80. When we gave her 80th birthday, she brought along her lovely, lovely boyfriend, who we all adored because my father had died some years before. And we were all thrilled that she had a lovely companion, and they used to sit on a Sunday afternoon. They used to sit and get the Sunday Times out or whatever and go through all of the holiday sections in the back and just book holidays like that. And I think that's a great way to live, particularly in later life. So do let us know. The usual way, GB Views at gbnews.com. Tell us your story.
Good. Now, moving on, pro-Palestinian demonstrations will go ahead once again today as counter-terrorism SAR said certain parts of London have become no-go zones for Jewish people.
And the protest follows accusations by the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee that Israel is blocking aid into Gaza.
Yeah, and it comes as protest group Palestine Action, as you can see on your screens there, sprayed and slashed an historic painting of Lord Balfour at the University of Cambridge yesterday.
Yeah, the group actually claimed that the piece symbolised the bloodshed of the Palestinian people since the Balfour Declaration, which was in 1917.
Yeah, and we're joined now in our studio by our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. And can we see any change, do you think, today, Catherine, in the policing? You've been at these demonstrations since the very beginning. You've had some stick yourself. They roll on and on and on. Rishi Sunak has implored the police to stand firmer, but they don't seem to be doing that.
No, it's like Groundhog Day, I have to say, because the first one was the Saturday after the atrocities by Hamas on October the 7th, and many Saturdays since. Many millions being spent by the police, and this appeal, of course, from the Prime Minister just over a week ago to the police, to police robustly, and to the protesters, saying don't let extremists wreck your marches. But the question is anybody listening, and is it going to make any difference? Because the Met Police boss saying, well, we have to police within the law. This is the law as it stands. And, you know, nothing has changed in some senses. Rishi Sunak standing there and issuing a plea doesn't mean that we're going to see the same sorts of scenes. And what surprised me in these marches over and over again...
How many have you been on?
Oh, I have I've lost count.
Almost all of them.
Most of them. Yeah. Most of them. This is what I do on Saturday. But... you know, the river to the sea, you hear that chanted repeatedly. The police don't act. Now, they say that that's because they can't. People are entitled to say that. Also, the protesters will chant it for a few seconds and then stop.
Nice.
But also things like covering your face. Now, that is not allowed. But again, you see so many people with their face covered. But talking to the police at the marches, they clearly would rather not arrest people. In fact, they've made dozens of arrests, but we've seen hundreds of thousands of people at these marches. So dozens of arrests is a small number, and I think as of the end of the year, last year, only about 36 had actually been charged. So these are tiny numbers. And of course, this is teaching protesters that you can go really quite far without consequence. So it will be interesting to see, but I think it's very obvious. You can see why the Jewish community increasingly feel, when these marches are taking place, that central London has become a no-go zone, and that's very, very sad.
OK, well, political commentator Peter Spencer joins us here as well. I mean, who's to blame, then, for this chaotic problem that nobody seems to be able to have the courage to tackle?
Well, ultimately, who's to blame is, of course, Hamas, because on October the 7th, they slaughtered 1,200 Jewish people, and that has set the ball rolling for the hideous carnage that we've seen since. The Palestinian death toll now, mainly women and children, is some 30 times that number, and we've got to a point where Joe Biden, Benjamin Netanyahu's staunchest ally, is getting impatient with the way the Israeli...
Well, to be fair, everybody is now getting impatient with this.
Absolutely right, yeah. And so, that said, there are bound to be ripples of these tensions and this grief spreading outwards, and it spreads onto London streets. No surprise there whatever. I mean, I do take the point that the vast majority of the demonstrations have actually been peaceful, and the vast majority of the demonstrators are simply saying, look, stop the fighting. They're not using the G word and blah, 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 blah. And, of course, the police have an incredibly difficult job to do, because, on the one hand, they do have to uphold the right of peaceful demonstrators to express their views, and also, let's get real here, if they decided, right, we're going to arrest anybody who's out demonstrating, well, where are they going to put them for a start? You and whose army?
But Martin, I mean, you were coming out of the Westminster studio that one day when they projected the river to the sea image on the Elizabeth Tower of Big Ben, and they didn't stop it, did they?
Well, more than that, I pleaded with police. I said, there's the projector. character, go and nick them. They were putting that image on Big Ben. It was being portrayed around the world. I thought it sent out a terrible message. Men in balaclavas, women chucking eggs at me, chucking fluids, could have been anything. And I was saying to the police, nick them. They had no interest, Pete. They had no interest because the police, I believe, well, I've seen it with my own eyes, at these demos, they simply stand and watch. They don't want to get involved, they soft soap the mob.
Yeah, I mean, they do as little as they possibly can because, as I say, if they were to charge in there in a militant fashion, then that would escalate hideously and you'd have serious civil disorder on the streets.
Somebody could have stood in front of the projector, though, couldn't they?
Well, I thought myself about giving it a boot, and I thought, if I do that, I'll get nicked.
Yes,
serve you right.
Yeah, well, there we go. But
get nicked or beaten up. I mean, it wouldn't have been a very nice prospect. Yeah. Should we ask former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall what she makes of who's to blame and who's going to do anything about this? Who's going to grasp the nettle?
Yeah, well, you're quite right. And I think that the police have some serious questions to answer, especially when you look at the behaviour outside of Westminster on that Wednesday evening. And I was around the estate at that time, and it was pretty hideous, I have to say. And to not take away the projector that they could quite clearly see was a ridiculous decision. But I do also think that there is impetus upon the organisers of the march to have their protesters understand that covering your face is basically illegal, and carrying those banners with certain words on shouldn't be allowed and should be taken away. And I think that the organisers really do have to make that message, say, we want to come together for this reason, we want to come together and express our views, but you must do this within the law. So I think that the responsibility really is with pretty much everybody. I think the Prime Minister has done his bit. There is nothing more that Parliament can add to the law. There is currently enough legislation surrounding it. So it now comes down to faith leaders, it comes down to organisers, and it comes down to individuals to actually understand, if they're chanting something out, what it is, because in some cases, I don't think they do.
Well, Claire, I wonder if the time for chit-chat and soft talking is over. Rishi Sunak is imploring the police to get tough. Sir Mark Rowley has said, we're not going to do that. What we're doing will carry on. We've heard from the government's own Home Office's independent advisor on extremism, Rob Simcox, this week saying, don't allow the extremists amongst your fold. That isn't going to happen. Is it time just to call time on this? In France, they banned these marches. They did the same in Germany. Are we at that point now?
I think it's very difficult, and I think Peter touched on this. The more you go in with a heavy boot, the more likely it is to kick off. And if you start banning marches that have been organised and the route has been given to the police, then they will just spring up in areas where the police won't be expecting them. So I think that you risk a further disorder, and probably worse disorder than we're seeing. So there are no easy answers. It would be very nice to have the streets back on a Saturday without these marches going ahead. But unfortunately, I don't think that's the case until something changes in the Middle East.
OK, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Claire, Peter and Catherine. Thank you very much. At 12 minutes past 8, here's something that has clearly got you going today. I must say, we've had so many emails come in to gbviews@gbnews.com. We won't be able to read them all out. Some of them are very extreme as well. You don't feel very friendly towards Meghan, but
That's
last
one way
night,
of putting it.
It was International Women's Day, you see, yesterday. And last night she joined, she's the Duchess of Sussex, of course, she joined a panel discussion on women's representation in entertainment and the media.
Yeah, Meghan told the panel she was cyberbullied while pregnant with Archie and Lilibet.
The bulk of the bullying and abuse that I was experiencing in social media and online was when I was pregnant with Archie and with Lily and with a newborn with each of them. And you just think about that and to really wrap your head around why people would be so hateful. It's not catty, it's cruel. Why you would do that, and certainly when you're pregnant or you have a newborn, we all, as moms, it's such a tender and sacred time.
Now, this all comes after news yesterday that Meghan and Harry, but Meghan particularly, they're looking for sort of public relations experts here in Britain to relaunch their image in the UK.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Welcome to the show, Richard. Always a pleasure. So it's fair to say Meghan Markle, at least, has a pretty dire public reputation, it seems, if you look at the comments from our readers and viewers anyway. It's a pretty big job, isn't it, to be her PR guru in the UK?
Well, now that is a Sisyphean challenge. I mean, really, it is. The point, so far as International Women's Day is concerned, I mean, to be fair, she's always done something on International Women's Day regarding herself as a feminist. There's no doubt that what she says, and it's interesting, actually, it does get a tremendous amount of coverage, but not necessarily, as you've just pointed out, favourable coverage. But if, in fact, she's seeking to rehabilitate her reputation here and in Europe, I mean, I just simply don't see it. I mean, the point, firstly, is that her reputation, well, the Sussexes are far, far less popular in the United States. But so far as Britain's concerned, I mean, they've pretty well been at rock bottom for a very long time. For 4 years, they've caused enormous problems for the royal family. And people just simply don't forget that. And also, I mean, we've just had the shortlisting of the book awards of Harry's memoir Spare. Now, he had a very skillful ghostwriter. No doubt he narrates it perfectly adequately, but that book did a lot of harm. And if you trash your family, people don't respect you.
It's interesting that they've never really shown very much interest in their popularity back home here in Britain until now, when there is a lot of talk in the States that their popularity there is really waning, in fact, tanking. And also this idea that's bubbling under the surface that at some point, maybe it would be a new President Trump, for instance, who would say, get rid of Harry from the States, because of the way he applied for his visa. And in other words, that Harry and Meghan may have to look for a new home. And if it's in Britain, then they've really got to do something about their image here.
Well, firstly, I mean, Spare was so toxic that they were evicted from Frogmore Cottage. I mean, that was the way the royal family were able to make their feelings known. So far as the visa application and what he put on it, we haven't seen it, but a judge has asked to see it, to see whether it should be made public. Now, I think that this highlights how unwise the Sussexes have been. I think that they were on a level where they felt somewhat entitled, that they could say what they think. I mean, Meghan once said in an interview, I can say what I like. Well, you can never say what you like. And Harry has talked quite openly, and certainly to Dr. Gabor Mate, with one of the interviews he gave to promote Spare, about drugs and, in his opinion, the remedial use of them. The facts are, however, that this may cause problems in weeks and months to come. And if President Trump, if there were to be a President Trump, we know his relationship with the Sussexes, to put it mildly, is icy. He's made that very clear recently. You never know exactly where this is going to go. I mean, I certainly can't see in any form a member of the royal family being, so to speak, evicted from the United States. I mean, the whole thing would be a bizarre circus if that was the case. But precisely where this ends up, one can't tell at the moment. And the facts are they've been very unwise. You can't say exactly what you think. And some of the stuff he put in Spare, whether it was losing his virginity, penile frostbite, the numbers of Taliban he took out on his second tour of duty in Afghanistan, something the military don't do, and the issues of drugs, all of this may well, I mean, firstly, it was an object of mockery. Secondly, the issue of drugs may come back to haunt him in ways that we can't yet foresee.
OK, Richard Fitzwilliams, we have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure.
And is it interesting as well that we see them promoting mental health projects as they do? I can't think of anything much worse for your mental health than engaging with social media when you're pregnant and you're one of the most famous women in the world.
Surely a better position, Anne, would be just to say, I've deleted all my apps.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
You are howling into the void. You are immaterial to to my life. Stop feeding the trolls.
Except that they're not immaterial, because Harry and Meghan, when they left the royal family, had to do stuff that was going to bring in the money.
Yeah.
They had to earn their living. And we all know nowadays that it's in the media, you have to have a social media following, don't you? Whether they're nasty followers or nice ones.
But I know, like Nigel Farage gets an immense amount of abuse. All he ever does is projects outwards, never reads any of the comments, never engages with any of the comments. Don't get involved. Be bigger, be above it, project your message and move on. Why can't Meghan do the same?
Why did she read all that stuff when she was pregnant and vulnerable? And, as I say, one of the most famous women in the world. She ought to know better, but apparently they're very bad at taking advice, Harry and Meghan, so it's said. So if they're looking for a PR guru here in Britain, gosh, good luck with them.
It's a tough job.
Yes, it would be a very tough job. I don't think it'd last very long. Right, where are we? 19 minutes past 8. We're going to be talking about the sport coming up. But first of all, let's catch up with the weather news.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast for GB News from the Met Office. It's going to be a dull weekend, a cold feel as well, with brisk easterly winds and spells of rain or showers moving across the country. We start the day with a lot of cloud cover, outbreaks of rain moving through parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, into northern England, eventually eastern Scotland seeing showers carried into the east, and we're going to see outbreaks of rain also arriving into the eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Driest and brightest weather towards the southeast with some sunny spells, western Scotland as well. And after a chilly start, things will warm up a touch, although it will stay on the cold side in the east with the brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Into the evening, further spells of rain or showers, some heavy at times across the southwest as well as into Wales, northern England. And then the southeast gets a bit of a soaking as a band of persistent rain moves through, and that spreads across much of the east of the UK overnight, a few showers continuing further west. Of course, with the cloud and the rain and the breeze overnight, it's going to be mostly frost-free, although there will be a touch of frost across western Scotland where we do get some prolonged clear spells. But it's an unsettled start to the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover, spells of rain for many places, especially across Scotland, into much of England, East Wales and Northern Ireland. The brightest weather actually by the afternoon will be across the southwest, although still the potential for a few showers here. And it's going to feel cold with temperatures in many places staying at 6 to 8 Celsius.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, brace yourselves, it's time for our latest Great British Giveaway. And first, it was Phil from West Yorkshire. And now we have our latest winner, Charles from Stoke-on-Trent, who won a whopping 18 grand in cash. And here's the moment Charles found out that he'd won.
Charles, I have some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
Oh, flipping heck. Oh, dear.
You've won £18,000.
Flipping heck. That's a big surprise. Flipping heck. I don't know what to say.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, yes, and congratulations. Now's your chance to enter our latest Great British Giveaway and win £12,345 in cash and a whole host of treats.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GB-WIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Flipping heck. Now, I think I might have said something a bit fruitier than that, Anne.
Yes,
What about you?
I think a lot of people would, yeah. Especially winning 18 grand, very nice. But £12,345 would go down very well. Do you know what I'd do with it? I'd book another holiday.
Yeah, because your last one was a washout.
It literally, actually, yes. Oh, well. Do stick with us. 23 minutes past 8 it is. And still to come in a couple of moments, when are you too old to get married? Try telling Rupert Murdoch. Anyway, we'll try and find out from some experts on the subject.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
I've got an idea. I think that all 30-year-olds should be given £10,000 from the banks of baby boomers. We've got a situation in this country now where millennials are the first generation in modern times expecting to be poorer than their parents. We, as 30-year-olds like me, are half as likely to own a house as people my age 30 years ago. In fact, the cost of a home in Britain compared to average incomes has as big a gap today as it did, wait for it, in the 1860s. It is a Dickensian situation.
Now, I'm sorry about the housing crisis for your generation.
You're not, though, are you?
No,
because you're profiting from it.
I'm profiting from it. Don't be ridiculous.
The house prices now, compared to that period.
If this is the case, Benjamin...
Have incomes gone up that fast?
To penalise and punish the elderly when they have worked all their lives to put into the system and say it's your fault, whingy, whiny, we're going to be envious...
But we're being punished.
No, by the politics, so be the change you want to see in the world.
Taxes, I am actually, and I'm about to tell you about the change I want to see in the world.
Are you good? As long as it's not whining about it.
I'm going to stop whining about it, but we are being taken advantage of at the moment to profit, to help the old. Most of taxpayers' money is spent in two departments, the NHS, so the health department, and the Department for Work and Pensions. Those departments disproportionately serve the older population. Now, I've got no issue with that, but let's not pretend that it is not young working people that is paying for the public services for old people. So actually, we are having it hard, and I just look at the future, and we see a future of perpetually higher taxes to pay for this increasing ageing population, a shrinking labour force, and you're here saying we've got nothing to worry about.
The young stop voting for mass immigration parties. The young stop voting for parties
just to
that
point
don't
out,
build houses.
Immigrants actually pay taxes, pensioners don't.
Welcome back. 8:27. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin.
Now, media mogul Rupert Murdoch plans to marry once again, this time his girlfriend Alina Zhukova, at the grand old age of 92.
Yeah, some people think that he's actually too old to be getting married again. But I say, why not? If the couple are happy, if it makes him happy and her as well, age shouldn't be a barrier, should it?
Yeah, so today we're asking the big question, can one be too old to get married?
Well, joining us now is artist Monica Roberts and relationship coach Fahima Mahmed, and it's lovely to see you both. Right, let's start with you, Monica, because you've got an older husband, I think, with a 12-year age gap, which probably isn't that unusual nowadays. What do you think? When do you think you're too old to actually think of romance?
I don't think you're ever too old, to be honest. I think he's good if he's happy. I think that's the most important thing. And if a younger wife is what makes him happy, then I say good on him.
Fahima, if you've got a 92-year-old man who is very powerful, huge personality, very rich, of course, obviously, probably very interesting to talk to if you're not affected by some of his press things. But in other words, he's got charisma, clearly. He's got money, he's got standing, he's got power. Can you ever have a real relationship with that person when he's the grand old age of 92 and you're, what, 65?
Well, this is very interesting, and I know that times have changed. There's always exceptions to the rules, but studies recently have shown that actually the larger the gap, they're more likely to split. And of course, there's inequality with the power control, especially with someone of his caliber. And of course, everyone can talk from their own experience. And like I said, there's always going to be the one that says it doesn't matter. But recent studies do show that the age gap does matter. And anything over 5, you have a percentage of 18% of split. Anything 10 years and above is 39%. And if it's 20 years gap, which is in this particular case, it is 95% sort of chance of you actually splitting. So there's lots to consider for many reasons. And of course, as you are older as well, you do have the advantage, especially in his case, of actually having this more of a business contract than actually a relationship issue where you want someone to be there for you and it actually works in your favor instead of having a carer, especially in his condition right now, is to have somebody there to take care of all your needs, not just the one thing.
And Monica, a cynic might say, what attracted you to the millionaire Rupert Murdoch? But certainly his kids might be concerned about that. Isn't that another huge concern where you have age gaps of such a nature? The fact that if he pops his clogs, then the new missus might get all the cash.
Well, I suppose that is a concern for the family, but I think ultimately if they love each other, they have a right to happiness no matter what the age gap or no matter how old he is. I mean, from my own experience, I have been incredibly happy in a relationship. I've been accepted by my family's, my husband's family. I mean, that's never been an issue. And I think they happy to see him happy and he makes me happy. And I think that is what is important. As long as you have something in common, it works.
To me, I find what's interesting about this announcement is not the age gap so much as the fact that he is 92 and he still wants love in his life. Is that unusual, do you think, Faima?
It's not unusual. Like I said, everyone will have their rights to have what they want, but we have to analyze the situation as to what are the actual core needs for each partner and what are the concerns and the impact, and obviously the long-term longevity of the actual relationship. And one, more likely is going to pass later on. So what is the actual insight as to why would you want to enter into a relationship like that in the first place, from his perspective as well as his partner's? Because there's so many limitations with regards to even his, mobility, his cognitive thought, his actual ability and his life expectancy. Also the fact that, their actual compatibility with regards to their stages and ages and their different goals and plans. And yes, everyone can talk from their own experience, but like I said, these are studies from thousands of, people across the cultures, across sort of, research to show that this doesn't necessarily is the best way to move forward, nor is it the compatibility in the life expectancy or the actual ways in which that they can actually aspire to grow old, in a way that you would think that normal couples will last in, especially if it's just a 2-3 year gap.
All right.
Fascinating business, yeah, but he'll go ahead anyway because he always does what he wants, doesn't he? Faima and Monica, thank you very much indeed. It's interesting talking about, he's a businessman, he's been a businessman all his life, he's 92 now, he still wants love in his life. Is that more of a sort of business relationship than maybe a lovey-dovey one? And it is always said that Aristotle Onassis, when he married Jackie Kennedy, had very much a business pact with her, that she would spend so many nights a year with him, that she would do so many events alongside him on his arm. It was very much a sort of business contract.
Yeah, you might find at 92 he doesn't even last the wedding night, but what a way to go.
True.
Yeah. You'd die with a smile on your face, wouldn't you?
A lot of people would have a smile on their face, but there you go. No more need be said about that. At 8:33, shall we move on to the sport in just a couple of moments? What have we got sport-wise?
Plenty going on this weekend, and we've already shone a light on the boxing with Anthony Joshua. We've also looked ahead to the Premier League game tomorrow between Manchester City and Liverpool, clash of the Titans. After the break, though, we'll be looking ahead to Six Nations action at Twickenham Island against England. We'll be hearing from a 2003 England World Cup winner.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Well, we've been a constitutional monarchy since the late 17th century, and of course part of that deal is that the monarch, or indeed the close immediate royal family, should not interfere with politics that in any way could be seen to affect individual parties. Now, perhaps one of the most classic cases in the 20th century was Edward VIII, who during his brief reign went down to Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales, met thousands of people who'd lost their jobs in the steel industry. In fact, he shook so many hands in the end he had to change and shake with his left hand, and he said something must be done to get these people jobs. It was taken as a direct assault on the Conservative government of the day. And we could go on to Edward Heath, as many saw it, using the Queen to get us to join the common market, and things the Queen said during the referendum on Scottish separation. And we could, of course, talk about King Charles, who as Prince of Wales endlessly talked about climate change and net zero. But the intervention overnight from Prince William, I think, is the most direct political piece of interference that has international and global implications that I almost think we've ever seen. Prince William is saying to Israel, stop what you're doing. Some will see that as being given a free pass to Hamas. Many young people will say, hooray, he's doing the right thing. But whether he's doing the right thing or not, has he gone just too far with this? Should our future king intervene in this way? I don't believe that he should. I think he's making a very big mistake.
Hello again, welcome back. 8:36, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin, and Aidan's joined us. And it's funny, I'll tell you what we were talking about during the break. I don't quite know how we got onto the subject.
Nor me.
But the romance of doing the drying up together.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this about a friend of yours, their parents.
Yeah, it's interesting because you know, I think someone used the phrase early on, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so some relationships work some ways, others in other ways. But my parents, for example, had care homes, so they were very much in each other's pockets all the time. And the care homes are 30 miles away from their homes, so they had to put each other on shift at the same time. There was so much to do. It was an all-encompassing job. You're never really off duty for all those years. Having said that, the contrast was that a mile away from mine, a friend of mine, Andrew, I'd go around to his house after school sometimes, a couple of nights a week, and I remember offering to help his mum with the drying up. Didn't do it often, but I did on a couple of occasions. And she said, oh, no, I'd rather you did it, because her husband, Paul, was a civil engineer working in Bristol, based in Kent, working in Bristol. He would come back, to the home, and that was the only half an hour they'd get together before his mother, my friend's mother, Catherine, would have to go to be a midwife in the evening. So that half an hour, compared to the contrast that my parents spending their lives together
I completely understand
was completely
that.
different.
Yeah, the drying up.
But both worked.
Yeah, it gives you a chance to just talk because you're doing something else. And a lot of counsellors and say if you need to talk to your child about something difficult or whatever, pick them up from school and drive, because when you're driving with somebody, you're not looking at each other. But you're in an enclosed space and you can talk about things that you wouldn't talk about normally.
Yeah, but you can't escape.
You can't escape, no, but I don't know, there's an intimacy to it. But there certainly is to drying the dishes together. I think that's lovely.
Good.
I don't know how we totally got onto that.
Talking of things
but
we
I know
don't...
that you've got somebody special for us to meet.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. He's been on GB News before, and we want to look ahead to the Six Nations match today, England versus Ireland at Twickenham. I want to bring in Lewis Moody, the 2003 World Cup winner with England, of course, down there in Sydney. Lewis, good morning to you. Welcome to GB News, as always. Now, Ireland are not comfortable with their tag as favourites this afternoon, but surely, even as a dyed-in-the-wool England man, you can probably see no other way of billing it.
No, absolutely. And they rightly have that tag. I just want to lean back on the conversation you're having with Anne about travelling with your kids in the car. What a beautiful time that is to have proper conversations. My kids always unload in the car in a good way. But yeah, Ireland, a totally random point. It just made me smile this morning, Anne, so thank you. I love what Ireland have been doing. You know, Andy Farrell, who I played with in the 2007 World Cup, is leading Ireland. He's got Mike Catter, 2003 World Cup winning Englishman in his side, leading their attack. They are doing wondrous things, you know, even with the absence of their talisman, Johnny Sexton, who'd been around for so long and directed that Ireland team. Crowley has come in at fly half and taken them to seemingly a new level. So I know they're unhappy with that tag of favourites, but that's what they are. And England, you know, not surprisingly, but come into this really rank outsiders. An underdog hopefully suits them in this game.
Lewis, can I just put it to you bluntly? Do you think Ireland should have won the World Cup?
Oh, should have won the World Cup. I was so devastated as, you know, as someone sitting in the Northern Hemisphere, wanting another Northern Hemisphere team to do well. As soon as the French went out, you know, that was gutting in a home tournament. The Irish, who had been number one side in the world and still are arguably the best team in the world at the moment, just couldn't do it when it was needed. And it does show you how difficult it is to go and win a tournament like that. But they have all the weapons at their disposal at the minute. And if you look at this England team, Steve Borthwick knows that Ireland can score tries. So he has brought in what you can probably say is England's most exciting back three since the likes of Josh Lucy and Jason Robinson, with Feo Obosu coming in, who is really quite an exciting player.
Ireland, Lewis, have struggled with psychology usually at World Cups in the past, never really making it beyond the quarter-finals, but they also seem to have a little bit of a psychological block at Twickenham. They don't win there very often. Do you expect that to be a factor this afternoon?
Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. I mean, if anyone's seen Andy Farrell's Lions videos that are doing the rounds on YouTube over this week, you know, there is a man that knows how to deal with pressure. He's done it as a player. He's done it as a coach. And I have absolutely no doubt that this team are prepared for whatever England are going to throw at them. And Steve Borthwick wants to play an attacking, aggressive style of rugby, which I think in the first half we could see some elements of open play and England exploiting some of the gaps that exist. There are very few of them in the Irish defence. But I think then really Ireland will probably run away with it. And, you know, despite some of the changes like George Martin coming in the second row, he's a big ball-carrying, you know, fella who's been plying his trade well. He took a great opportunity coming off the bench against Scotland, as did Woboso. The only real nervy area for me in terms of where England can be exploited potentially is that inexperience in the back three. You know, no Freddie Stewart, no Elliot Daly, but you do have three players that are the next generation that could potentially open up this game for England if they get an opportunity to have the ball, which I'm sure Ireland unlikely will let them have.
Great. Listen, Lewis, it's great to have you on GB News as usual. We'll look forward to further analysis from you, I'm sure, in the days and months to come. But, yeah, it should be a thrilling fixture this afternoon at Twickenham. And I take Ireland to win if I was going to be a betting man. I don't gamble very often, though.
You know, you get a very small price on that. But
yeah, you would.
England, it looks like they're on very thin ice.
They should have won the World Cup, I think, Ireland. And I think, you know, actually England got further than Ireland in the World Cup. But I think Ireland certainly underperformed, arguably England over.
Superb. Eddie McGee, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there. We'll be back with you in just a couple of moments, looking through the newspapers.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Is a debate on gender really a far-right issue?
Far right. I'm so bored of that phrase, you know what I mean? Like, anyone who talks about... anyone who acknowledges that there are two sexes is suddenly far right, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini were all about. This question from Shirley is, of course, about Labour. They've been accused of being undemocratic because they pressured a pub into cancelling a debate, and this debate features Kelly J. Keane, who's been on this show a couple of times, and she's a campaigner, and she was just on the panel, and then they got a letter saying that they couldn't do it because Kelly J. Keane apparently attracts far-right groups. Now, they've tried this trick before, but because some awful, ghastly neo-Nazi types turned up near to an event that she was holding in Australia, they kind of tried to blame that on her and suggest that the two were the same thing. They weren't. That was an opportunistic group turning up to... they're not... Neo-Nazis aren't pro-feminist. They're not pro an event called Let Women Speak. That's just ridiculous.
New Zealand's TV blurred her touching her zip because they said that her touching her zip was a far-right dog whistle because she's making that symbol.
Yeah, but she wasn't making the symbol, she was just adjusting her zip.
Yeah, and also, this isn't a far-right symbol.
I mean, that was incredible because she obviously wasn't making that symbol anyway. She was just adjusting her top. But this New Zealand news channel blurred out the hand so that they could pretend that it was some horrible, ghastly...
Yeah.
I mean, this is stuff, isn't it?
She's talked about having voted Labour in the past. She's so not far right.
But also,
I mean,
even if she were right-wing, which she
Yes.
isn't, why would they be banning a panel where there's a discussion about one of the most important issues of our day? What are Labour playing at here?
They're anti-democratic, aren't they? They're just kind of playing whack-a-mole with things they don't like. I think maybe I'll write to the pub and say I do want to see Kelly J. Keane there.
Yeah, but they won't listen to you
Well,
if
no,
you say
they
that,
won't.
will
They
they?
won't.
Because you've got the unfashionable opinion, Chris.
Well, and the unfashionable workplace.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
8:46, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin. We'll go through the newspapers now. Stephanie Tetchy and Susan Holder are with us. And thanks for coming in again. It's lovely to see you. Susan.
Yes.
Yes, Matthew Perry.
Yes, so Matthew Perry, who everybody presumably knows as Chandler Bing on Friends, who unfortunately fairly recently died, was not mentioned in the in memoriam section of the film BAFTAs that were held just a couple of weeks ago. And everyone was up in arms about this because it's such a shocking death, I think. We all feel we knew Matthew Perry so well. Friends is... I mean, I know there are some people who don't watch Friends, but there's not very many.
Not many.
It's on all the time, everywhere you go. And I you know, controversial.
So why didn't they mention it?
Well, we don't know why they didn't. They said it's going to be in the TV because that was the film BAFTAs, and there's going to be the TV BAFTAs.
Yeah,
but he was a film actor as well.
He's done 2 movies actually.
He's done like big movies.
Only Fools Rush In. So he's had that credibility.
Tina Turner got a mention from Mad Max, which, I mean, it's not right to kind of pick up who was and who wasn't, because I would say that Tina Turner was right to be mentioned, but not to mention Matthew Perry on the BAFTA, I think was an omission. So his ex-girlfriend, who was also his PA, has come out and said, well, it was his dream to be mentioned at the Oscars. I don't expect it was his dream to be mentioned in the in memoriam section. But he was, what he always said he wanted to be remembered for, he knew that when he died, because he obviously had big struggles with depression and addiction, and he wrote a book that has detailed allowed all of that. And he always said, I know it's going to happen, but when I die, I don't want the first thing to be friends. I want them to say I did lots of work to help other people
Which he did,
with depression and addiction. And I think he did do that. And I think if anyone reads his book, they'll know that. And that's why I wanted to say it today, to say that, really, that is how I will now think of him going forward. And he is such a familiar kind of... And controversially, I would say, is he the favourite friend? He's nearly everybody's favourite because he was so funny. He was so intrinsic to that show. I do
But
hope
they all
he gets
were. That was the brilliance.
They all but he actually was upset. He did a lot of the writing as well.
All right. Let's move on to this story we've been covering throughout the morning. But, Steph, we were just about getting into this with you earlier. And that's Meghan Markle. Let's be honest, droning on about being abused. Woe betide me. She has a gilded lifestyle, and yet she made, once again, the subject of her speech, the fact that she's very hard done by. Tell us more.
Well, you know, she attended the Southwest by Southwest Festival in Texas yesterday, and she'd done a keynote speech, and she said that, you know, she's opened up about the cyberbullying she faced while she was pregnant with Archie and Lilibet. But what I found more intriguing was she said it was women who had been cyberbullying, which I'm not surprised about, because men have a relaxed approach maybe towards Meghan. They might not like her, but they're not actually going to go on Twitter and spew all this hate against her. Yeah, but what I find interesting is she always talks about mental health, and when it comes to social media, people always say, don't read the comments, just don't look for it, because once you read it, you're going to almost just absorb all that kind of hate and criticism. But in Meghan's defence, curiosity always kills the cat. Sometimes you do want to know what people are saying about you online. And I think, you know, Meghan is the most talked about person. And I feel like even for her, sometimes it must be hard to block out. And, you know, we're in this generation where everyone talks about be kind, be kind. And I know Meghan's always going on about something. But she still has a right to express how she feels she's been treated.
It's a conundrum because she has to be famous in order... They both now have to be famous in order to get the money in because they have to earn their own living.
We're good to use your platform for some good, wouldn't it, if you're that famous?
But how do you be famous as she is? How do you exist with that level of fame and not look at social media?
Don't listen. Don't look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to... we all... Now, I'm on TV just doing this. There will be comments that people will say. And I would say, actually, it's not just women who do that, in my experience. But I think Meghan's an interesting one. To go on an International Women's Day platform and call out women, it's an interesting take, Meghan. I don't know who does her PR advice, but it's... I mean,
what if it's true?
Well, if it's true, is that the time to say it? Do you call it?
Why not?
Also, well, maybe, but she doesn't... Look at what she says about Kate. You know, she's not whiter and white there. She's not kind of, you know, out of the woods herself in not being able to say, I never do this. She could accentuate the positive more. I do think she should have talked about it. She has talked about it. I don't know why she's still talking about it. Because what she needs to do is say, bring up the positives. Tell that audience, we all know that there's horrible stuff, but this is the good stuff that I get. This is the good stuff that I've seen. These are the people that I've met that are great. This is show people how to be better rather than just having a go at the people you think
maybe
negative.
She's just addressing the elephant in the room. And also, like, Meghan and Harry are here to stay. They're going to be part of British culture, even though they live in LA. They're still going to be a part of this culture. And maybe she is trying to redefine that relationship with the public and just air out all this stuff so we can all move on. Because if you put something about Meghan online, people are just instantly going to criticise her. People don't get bored.
Yeah, but what she's done is she's criticised those women who are trolling her last night. And that's just going to invite more. I mean, that's what she's got to stop doing.
And also, you say, is it true? But if it's on social media, how on earth would you know the gender? They hide behind all sorts of names. There's not the real identity of those people. So that's a presumption on her part.
Hang on. As the token bloke on this panel, I think it is important because this online misogyny debate has been going on for years and years and years. What if it is other women? You know, a word I won't use, the B word. What if it is women being like that towards other women?
Well,
that should
we were talking about this in the room. We've all been in the playground. We know how vicious other women and girls can be. I've worked in newsrooms predominantly where it's a mix of men that actually help stop a lot of that, of women kind of being cliquey. And, I mean, you know, I produced Loose Women for many years. It's too many women in one place. There's too many women on production, there's too many women on staff, and people do get cliquey and a bit kind of like, we're going for lunch, but don't tell her. Men don't act like that. So it's a good mix. So I know that women can be very mean. We've all had to deal with that but I don't online when you can hide, it is.
I think as well what is hurtful for Meghan, and the reason why she brought the women issue up, because she said it was while she was pregnant. So if you're a woman and you've been pregnant, why would you then attack another woman when she's pregnant?
But if you were her friend or a sister or a mum, you'd say, don't look at your phone. When you sort it, do something else. And so she doesn't take her... But apparently they don't take advice very well.
No, they don't.
And there are a lot of good comments, and always have been, about Meghan, because she is somebody it's very easy to... She's very, intelligent, she's very beautiful, she speaks very well, she has done lots of good things. So there's lots of that there as well. But she doesn't concentrate on that, which makes it hard for other people to, I think.
And she's on the lookout for a new PR guru.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
That's one of the toughest jobs on the planet.
Well, there is talk that she wants to relaunch her lifestyle blog, The Tick. So we are... And she has a slate of films coming out with Netflix. So, this is not going to be the end of Meghan and Harry. So we're going to be hearing about her more. So I think maybe she just needs to air out what her problems are. And then hopefully, who knows, maybe 10 years from now, Meghan might be well-loved by the public again.
I like your glass half for that, too. Suze, we got a quick blast. McDonald's have got a new uniform.
They have got a new uniform, which seems to involve jogging bottoms, jeans and sweatshirts and beanie hats. Now, it's fine. I understand they want to be comfortable. I have no problem with being colourful. But it just kind of raises the question for me. It says also they want to create a look that reflects who they are. Why? You're at work. Why can't you wear a uniform at work? What do you wear in your free time if what you're wearing is a sweatshirt and jogging bottoms when you're at work? I just wonder if it's not... I don't know. Is it an age thing? But are they not really ready for work if they're going to work like that?
It'd be hard to spot the difference between the customers and the people serving you. They look like a bunch of scruffs.
No, they do. They do look like... It is a bit scruffy. I do think, like, when you get on a really nice airline and all the air hostesses are all kind of with the little scarves and everything else, does it make you feel safe? I think it does.
Yes, I think it does.
I think what you wear, actually, when you're at work is quite important to your mental kind of attitude and the way you put yourself forward.
OK, we've got to leave it there. Whilst I have a coughing fit, Martin will tell you what's coming up.
Yeah, so we'll be covering all the big stories, of course. Thank you, Suze. Thank you, Steph. We have to go, but first, let's throw to your weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast for GB News from the Met Office. It's going to be a dull weekend, a cold feel as well with brisk easterly winds and spells of rain or showers moving across the country. We start the day with a lot of cloud cover, outbreaks of rain moving through parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, into northern England, eventually eastern Scotland seeing showers carried into the east, and we're going to see outbreaks of rain also arriving into the eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Driest and brightest weather towards the southeast with some sunny spells, western Scotland as well. And after a chilly start, things will warm up a touch, although it will stay on the cold side in the east with the brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Into the evening, further spells of rain or showers, some heavy at times across the southwest as well as into Wales, northern England. And then the southeast gets a bit of a soaking as a band of persistent rain moves through, and that spreads across much of the east of the UK overnight, a few showers continuing further west. Of course, with the cloud and the rain and the breeze overnight, it's going to be mostly frost-free, although there will be a touch of frost across western Scotland where we do get some prolonged clear spells. But it's an unsettled start to the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover, spells of rain for many places, especially across Scotland, into much of England, East Wales and Northern Ireland. The brightest weather actually by the afternoon will be across the southwest, although still the potential for a few showers here. And it's going to feel cold with temperatures in many places staying at 6 to 8 Celsius.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345, £45 in tax-free cash. Text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, I'm sure you have seen this video that went viral this week, and if you haven't, well, I think you're going to enjoy it. This is a firefighter leaning on a fence whilst watching a trapped driving instructor's car sink in 4 feet of floodwater. Looks very comfortable there, doesn't he? Just leaning against the fence.
Just chilling, just relaxing. Yeah, there were there were in fact two Essex fire and rescue crews, an ambulance and a police car parked near the sinking vehicle, but they wouldn't enter the water because they had to wait for specialist crews who were trained for the water depth.
Well, two people who weren't going to sit back and watch were these two, Jack and Danielle Price, who took it upon themselves to rescue the submerged driver. And Danielle joins us now. Very good morning to you, Danielle, and you are a hero, an absolute hero. What happened in this video? Make sense of it for us.
So we were filming in the area for our YouTube channel, and we've seen the fire brigade come through. I was actually out at 5 o'clock in the morning with my husband, Jamie. We know it always happens there, as you can see, and it was clear. We've seen the fire brigade come through, we've followed them, and they're just standing around as if nothing's happened. In the clip, it says he's fine, he's on his phone, and then sort of walked away. But what they failed to realise is when my partner actually opened the door, as you can hear, he's on the phone to the emergency crew in panic, thinking he's going to sink. So we could not just sit there and watch. He's absolutely terrified.
Yeah, poor bloke. Well done you. Do you reckon this is health and safety gone mad?
It is, because although I do sympathise with them, they are so red-taped, but surely sort of common sense has to kick in as open the door.
Oh, sorry, I've still got the cough. If you were with us, oh look, my reminder says it's Mother's Day tomorrow, just in case you need reminding too. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 9th of March. Today, pro-Palestinian demonstrations are set to go ahead, despite concerns from the counter-terrorism czar that London has become a no-go zone for Jews. Catherine Forster will bring us the latest.
Yes, Rishi Sunak issued an appeal last week saying don't let extremists wreck your marches, also asking the police to police events rather than manage them. Will anything be different in today's marches? I'll be reporting throughout the day.
Yeah, it feels like Groundhog Day, and this comes as the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee claims Israel is blocking aid getting into Gaza as the humanitarian crisis in the region deepens.
Elsewhere in the news, Meghan Markle speaks out about the social media abuse that she received whilst she was pregnant. And, of course, the Princess of Wales's uncle claims that Harry and Meghan should actually be stripped of their titles.
Meanwhile, over the pond, US President Joe Biden and Donald Trump are set to hold dueling rallies in Georgia over the weekend. We'll be looking ahead to that epic clash.
Media mogul Rupert Murdoch is engaged now to be married at the age of 92. But how old is too old to get married?
If you've got outdoor plans this weekend, it's not the best weather. There will be rain and showers around, but not everywhere will be wet all the time. Find the full details in the forecast coming up soon.
A very good morning to you. I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News. I mean, a row of tears. I can't find anything at the moment. We've had lots of views about Meghan. She doesn't have divided opinion. Brenda says the royal family bent over backwards to welcome her, and so did the people of Britain, and all she did was complain.
Dave adds this: stifling their media exposure would hopefully put them both in a dark, dusty drawer where they belong.
Yeah, the media is not going to give up on them, though. I think Stephanie was saying it just a few minutes ago. They are here to stay. They will always make headlines, won't they, I'm afraid. And Meghan, is one of the most famous people in the world. There's absolutely no doubt about that. You could strip them of their titles and it would just make them more famous, I think.
Indeed. And Carolyn adds this: so, Meghan is complaining once again and playing the victim on International Women's Day. How about promoting the interests of women around the world who are actually suffering?
I think they do that, actually. Harry and Meghan. You just don't hear... that doesn't make the headlines, does it? Sheila says if anybody has to get a PR company to promote their image, it's a sad state of affairs. They're not even contrite, and they obviously feel entitled. If they really were serious about their image, they should stay home, stay quiet, and under the radar for several years, and hope that people come around to them.
And Georgie adds this: Meghan is a hypocrite. She talks about hate. Look what the pair of them have done to their families. It's disgraceful. We don't want them back over here again just because the USA has sense to possibly expel Harry.
Gary says trolling Meghan is wrong. Could you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and someone trolled the Queen and the royals? And when the Queen was dying, for instance. Imagine if they made TV shows to do this.
And a lot of people have been making this point. We've said it throughout the show. Dee adds this: I think Meghan is only trying to up her profile here in the UK because if Donald Trump becomes the president and kicks Harry out, then where on earth can they go?
OK, well, there are rather more serious things afoot as well, because pro-Palestinian demonstrations are going to go ahead for the first time since the counter-terrorism czar said that certain parts of London, in fact, he did say, I think, London, had become a no-go zone for Jews.
That's right. This protest follows accusations by the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee that Israel is now blocking aid into Gaza.
And this comes as the protest group Palestine Action sprayed and slashed a historic painting of Lord Balfour at the University of Cambridge.
Yeah, the group claims the piece symbolised the bloodshed of the Palestinian people since the Balfour Declaration in 1917.
Well, joining us now is the Shadow Minister with that portfolio, Nick Thomas-Symonds, and a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. First of all, your reaction to this never-ending string of marches that seem to divide people and cause hostilities, and there doesn't seem to be an answer. But can you think of a political answer to this?
Well, firstly, very good to join you this morning, Anne. With regard to the marches, look, I think we have to preserve the right to peacefully protest. I think that's a very important part of our democracy. But at the same time, we have to crack down on racism in all its forms. We have to be very strong and tough on anti-Semitism and indeed Islamophobia where it is found. And we have to make sure today that our police and especially our frontline police, who, by the way, have to deal with extremely difficult judgments in fast-moving situations, are given the support that they need to properly police these marches. And I think that support for our frontline police in very, very difficult situations is hugely important as well.
The matter is, I've been on these protests and the police are standing off. They're soft-soaping the protesters, and that leads to situations such as when they were outside Parliament the other Wednesday, effectively impacting what's going on in Parliament. We've seen your own parliamentarians, Sir Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, Annalise Dodds, Rachel Reeves, being harassed on the streets. Surely we need to get tougher with these protesters, send out a message that this abuse will not be accepted.
Well, listen, it is entirely unacceptable in a democracy for parliamentarians to be harassed, threatened, and with people trying to use those sort of methods to affect the decisions they make. That is totally and utterly unacceptable. In terms of the marches, I don't necessarily accept, though, Martin, your characterization that all police officers are acting in a particular way. I do think public order policing is a very particular type of policing. It's very difficult. And I think that police on the front line have to be relied on to make their own operational judgments. They don't want to do things that make the immediate situation worse, but at the same time, they have to hold the law. And I just think it's important the police have the resources they need and the backing they need to do their job. But what you say about intimidation to democratic representatives, I completely agree.
But it's fair to say, it's true to say, Nick, that the police are standing off. I was amongst the protests myself the other Wednesday. I was imploring officers to take down that projector that was putting that from the river to the sea message onto Big Ben and being beamed around the world, images which I believe shame our nation. I was imploring police officers to arrest men wearing full-face balaclavas, which is now illegal. They weren't doing that. Nick, it is fair to say the police seem to be soft-soaping these protesters.
Look, Martin, I can't dispute, obviously, what you've seen with your own eyes when you've been out, but I've obviously been out as well on the front line with police officers over a number of years, actually, in various Shadow Home Office portfolios that I've held. And the point I just make is that it is public order policing is a very particular challenge for our frontline police, because there is that balance between doing something that makes the immediate disorder worse, but also upholding the law. But in terms of tackling hatred, tackling anti-Semitism, tackling Islamophobia, we absolutely have to be doing that on our streets.
There seems to be a losing. The government, I mean, this whole country is losing confidence in the way we police certain things. And if I direct you towards the front page of the Times, I don't know if you've seen the interview, but the interview is with the two mothers of the two students who were so horribly murdered in Nottingham, which was when? It was months ago now, wasn't it? And, I mean, they feel that the police in Nottinghamshire have let them down. They feel they were misled by the Crown Prosecution Service because the man who murdered their children was never tried for murder. And it just seems to me, I was asking everyone earlier, why doesn't the Home Secretary just storm in there and get something done about this? Because this clearly seems to be some sort of a miscarriage of justice or a mishandling of the whole affair. What would you do? I mean, wouldn't you be the same? You'd want a Home Secretary who would go in there and get something done, and done fast.
Look, this is a harrowing crime in June of last year, and the families, nobody can be but moved by seeing what the families of all three victims actually have been saying about this. And there are very serious questions for different parts of our criminal justice system to answer. And absolutely, that getting those answers should be a huge priority for the Home Secretary and indeed the Justice Secretary. So in regards to the police, with Nottinghamshire Police, for example, there was a warrant issued for the arrest of this perpetrator back in September 2022 that wasn't executed. There were reports of assaults weeks before this heinous crimes took place that Leicestershire Police, in my view, have questions to answer. There's the Crown Prosecution Service and the way they engaged with the victims' families, who again have questions to answer. And there are also questions for how the mental health services that the perpetrator had engaged with had not picked up these escalations in his behaviour. So I think the families are absolutely right to ask very serious questions about how the system has operated here. And yes, we should be urgently trying to get those answers for the families, because it's the very least they deserve.
Yeah, well said on that point, Nick. Now, Nick, you're also here to talk about renters, and you see the government's flagship rent reformers bill as being in tatters. Tell us what the Labour Party have planned.
So, first of all, in respect of this, we had a promise from the government 5 years ago to ban no-fault evictions, called Section 21 evictions, where you have perfectly good tenants who are not behaving in any way that's detrimental to the property or their neighbours, people who are just living their lives in peace, who have to live under the potential threat of being evicted for no reason. Now, it was a cross-party position. Government promised to ban these Section 21 evictions 5 years ago. It's something, if it came to Parliament, I doubt anybody would oppose it. But the government continues to drag its feet. And the latest thing we see is that of the 47 MPs who are putting down delaying amendments, you know, we see that 11 of them are private landlords. So there's a vested interest here. And this is a question of leadership for the Prime Minister. It's what he's promised to do is just take on these vested interests and do what we would do, which is ban these no-fault evictions.
OK, great stuff. Thanks for joining us on the show. Nick, Thomas, Simmons,
yes,
always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Now, they come on to talk about the rent stuff, and we spring questions on them about marchers and murder case, but that's what politicians' job is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's exactly. My only further question would have been to say to him, at the moment, why would anyone want to be a politician? It just seems to me there are so many problems around at the moment, and they're big problems. They're ones that look almost insoluble.
Yeah.
Why would you want to be a politician?
But I wonder...
Unless you're very gifted and you have got ways of trying to sort things out.
But one thing I keep talking about is how come it took the parliamentarians so long to wake up to the mob on the streets? We've seen the mob, for example, the Batley Grammar School teacher has almost been 3 years in hiding. You know, everywhere is a no-go zone for him. They only seem to have woken up to the mob on the streets when they knocked on their door over at Parliament.
Don't you think... Yes, that's true. Don't you think that maybe a lot of politicians hope the problem will go away before they have to actually address it?
Well, I think that is wishful thinking at the very best and total foolhardiness at the worst.
It's cowardice.
It is. That's what it is. That's the word.
Well, you've heard what Labour, therefore, think about those housing problems. But that's just the rental market, because in the home ownership market, it's even worse.
Yeah, what if I told you that the average first-time buyer would now have to take a mortgage out for half a century to achieve the same level of affordability?
And it's getting the mortgage in the first place, too. Recent interest rate rises have seen loans plummet, with the smallest number of mortgages handed out to first-time buyers since 2013.
Yeah, well, here in the studio to discuss this now is independent North London estate agency owner Jeremy Leaf. Jeremy, thank you for joining us. We talk about housing all the time, in particular, the lack of it. When are we going to get a government that actually cuts through the red tape, stops listening to the NIMBYs and starts blooming well building?
Yeah, it's not quite as simple as the building. It's getting more properties into use. I mean, the biggest issue, and I think there is consensus, as Nick said earlier, is enough affordable homes to buy and to rent. And that's it. Does every policy pass that test or not? It's not just, for instance, a lot of talk has been about planning, a lot of talk about the Section 21. It's delivering those properties, properties which have obtained planning. It's making sure that, OK, we take away Section 21. It's not a good idea because people can just be turfed out of their houses if they've been living there for several years without fault. Of course, that's wrong. But at the same time, and this, I think, what the government are trying to create this balance on that particular issue, is to make sure that there's still enough properties available to rent, because what's going to happen? Otherwise, rents are just going to keep going up.
And I must say, I suppose we all witness the fact that our high streets and areas around cities are changing. There seem to be so many high-rise blocks just going up like mushrooms. And yet, when you actually see them being advertised for sale or rent, the prices are astronomical.
Yep.
They're never affordable homes we see being built. They're unaffordable ones.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, there are policies in place that a proportion of those homes which are built are supposed to be affordable for local people. Both the main parties have picked up on these points. They're using each other's policies and shouting out about them, and that's absolutely fine. But, as I just said to Martin, it's what's happening on the ground. It's all very well ticking boxes and saying, yes, we built this and that, but are they being delivered, and are they fit and affordable for local people?
And is there a high enough proportion of them as well?
Absolutely. It's just...
I mean,
we've
yes,
got plenty of good
builders
things.
who think they can make an absolute fortune on building expensive flats and apartments and houses. But are there enough affordable houses in amongst them?
Well, because we all know, Jeremy, that affordable housing as a proportion of a unit is a tick-box exercise so they can get planning permission. And anyway, half these are bought off plan by landlords who want to rent them out. Is a proper solution a nationwide programme of social house building? A lot of people watching this show, no doubt, be very happy about the fact they're able to buy their council house, the right to buy scheme back in the day, but it did deplete the stock. And meanwhile...
Which has never been made up.
Never been made up. Is that the answer? Social housing?
That's one of the answers. It's part of a bigger problem. But you see, for instance, you say about landlords coming in and buying up this stock and making it unavailable for other people. But some of the larger schemes actually are financed because people buy off plan initially.
Yeah.
ordinary people in the street can't get longer-term mortgages because the lenders won't say, well, we'll give a mortgage for a year or something. The maximum is about 6 months in advance of when it's ready. So they need people who perhaps have got funding who can buy up a proportion which would help to fund the rest of the stock. It's more about enforcement of what's there. It's just as much about that as getting new policies ready.
Wise words. And a lovely tie, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Jeremy Leaf, thanks very much for joining us on the show today.
OK, shall we catch up with the weather now? Here's Aidan McGivern.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast for GB News from the Met Office. It's going to be a dull weekend, a cold feel as well with brisk easterly winds and spells of rain or showers moving across the country. We will start the day with a lot of cloud cover, outbreaks of rain moving through parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, into northern England, eventually eastern Scotland seeing showers carried into the east, and we're going to see outbreaks of rain also arriving into the eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Driest and brightest weather towards the southeast with some sunny spells, western Scotland as well. And after a chilly start, things will warm up a touch, although it will stay on the cold side in the east with the brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Into the evening, further spells of rain or showers, some heavy at times across the southwest as well as into Wales, northern England. And then the southeast gets a bit of a soaking as a band of persistent rain moves through, and that spreads across much of the east of the UK overnight, a few showers continuing further west. Of course, with the cloud and the rain and the breeze overnight, it's going to be mostly frost-free, although there will be a touch of frost across western Scotland where we do get some prolonged clear spells. But it's an unsettled start to the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover, spells of rain for many places, especially across Scotland, into much of England, East Wales and Northern Ireland. The brightest weather actually by the afternoon will be across the southwest, although still the potential for a few showers here. And it's going to feel cold with temperatures in many places staying at 6 to 8 Celsius.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
19 minutes past 9, it's time for our latest Great British Giveaway. Our first winner, Phil from West Yorkshire, and now we have our latest winner, who's Charles from Stoke-on-Trent. And he won £18,000 in cash, very nice too. Here's the moment he found out.
Charles, I have some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
Oh, slippy neck. Oh, dear.
You've won £18,000.
Flippy neck. That's a big surprise. Flippy neck fire. I don't know what to say.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Flipping heck. I think I'll be saying something a bit different to that. Something probably not printable. Anyway, now's your chance to enter our latest Great British Giveaway and win 12,345 quid, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in cash and a whole host of seasonal treats.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Great stuff. Now, still to come, we'll be heading up to Scotland, where they've got their own problems with pro-Palestinian demonstrations. And that's next on Breakfast.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
Yeah. To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do. If
or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. Okay. If to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
Welcome back. 9:24 is the time. You're watching or listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin.
Yeah, let's get back to our top story now, because pro-Palestinian demonstrations around the country are going to go ahead today for the first time since that counter-terrorism czar said that certain parts of London, in fact, he said London, had become a no-go zone for Jewish people.
That's right, and this protest follows accusations by the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee that Israel is now blocking aid into Gaza.
Well, joining us now from Glasgow is GB News' Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire, which, of course, reminds us that the demonstrations aren't just happening in London, are they, Tony? I mean, where are they going to happen in Scotland?
Good morning. Yes, well, today, as we've seen quite often over the last few months, there's going to be protests happening all across Scotland. Here in Glasgow today at 12 o'clock, protesters will arrive in George Square at the heart of the city outside the Glasgow City Council offices, and there'll also be protests happening around Aberdeen, Edinburgh and Dundee from the late morning through to the early afternoon. Now, quite often in these protests we have heard quite a lot of the chanting from the river to the sea that was recently beamed onto Big Ben, and I hate to tell you, Martin, if you're looking for perhaps more arrests up in Scotland, then that's very unlikely to be the case, as Police Scotland this week have announced that without CCTV or photographic evidence of crimes, then they're actually going to be processing a lot less charges and following up on crimes than they used to due to funding cuts, and protests is certainly one of those areas where a lot of people are questioning how effective the police are in Scotland. Now, today's protest comes against the backdrop of another largely connected story, and that is Humza Yousaf having to come out swinging in defence of a donation that he made to relief in Gaza last year. On November 2nd last year, the First Minister, he donated £250,000 to the UNRWA, which is a highly controversial agency operating in Gaza, and they have come under accusations in the past of having various Hamas members working within their organisation. Now, Humza Yousaf, he has called these allegations, which were published in a story in the Telegraph, completely ludicrous and absolutely untrue, that there was a conflict of interest based out of the fact that he went ahead with the donation instead of listening to government advisors and his fellow ministers to donate around 100,000 to 200,000 to the UN. Instead, he donated the money from the Scottish Relief Fund to the UNRWA, and obviously that's caused quite a ruffled. That has ruffled quite a lot of feathers up here. Now, today we're expecting, the usual several thousand. Our protests up here, I would love to say we do love a good bridge up in Scotland, but certainly none of them are closed down as the result of these protests. The protesters will meet here in the middle of the city, but absolutely those rants, those anti-Semitic chants, which many find offensive, and quite often the majority of the public tend to stay away from the protests. Let's just hope the weather holds out for everybody concerned here in Glasgow.
OK, Tony Maguire, thanks for joining us live from Glasgow. It's amazing, isn't it, that Humza Yousaf gives £250,000 to Gaza. You might think he'd care more about Glasgow than Gaza. Anyway, what do I know? Let's move back to the studio now and get the thoughts of political commentator Peter Spencer. Peter, welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure. It's Groundhog Day. Gaza Groundhog Day. Here we go again. It's Saturday. Another massive protest. They've been divisive. Jewish people are afraid to leave their homes. Anybody who goes out there and challenges them, as I did, gets pelted with eggs and abuse and fluids and worse. Surely now we're at the point, as James Cleverly said, you've made your point. It's time to stop.
Well, the awful thing is that it's very likely time for things to get a whole lot worse when you consider the fact that Ramadan now looms and there's the threat from the Israeli authorities to actually get the tanks trundling into Rafah, at which point the humanitarian disaster that's already unfolding in Gaza could turn into a humanitarian catastrophe, at which point those inflamed emotions are likely to get one whole lot worse.
Yeah, and you can't see a solution either, can you?
No, you can't, not least because of the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has set his face against a two-state solution, which, of course, is the ultimate prize.
Well, you've got two sets of people who have vowed to destroy each other.
Yes, precisely. And so it is incredibly difficult for the police, it's incredibly difficult for the politicians of pretty much all stripes, and I note that the government is thinking about tightening up the definition of extremism. But here again, they run into enormous problems because if they come up with a particular formula, they might find that they've also caught feminists who are concerned about transgender rights or Christians who are concerned about abortion or gay marriages. And so getting the wording right is going to be incredibly tricky.
Let's face it, though, Peter, Benjamin Netanyahu won't listen to a mob on the streets of London.
No.
He won't listen to a mob on the streets of Glasgow.
No.
He won't listen to the United Nations or the Red Cross. He said at the very beginning, we have a right to defend ourselves and destroy those who wish to defend us. None of this makes a single bit of difference. So what's it actually about? Is it about calling for a ceasefire, or is it about something else? Is it about trying to influence and change British politics? And we've seen already votes changing in the chamber as a consequence of the mob outside. We've seen parliamentarians stepping down from office. Mike Freer, afraid his office was firebombed. Death threats, left, right and centre. This conflict in the Middle East is now poisoning British streets.
It's poisoning British streets, it's poisoning streets in a great many capitals and a great many cities across the world because it is hideous and it is brutal and it is terrifying.
It's poisoning Israel's relationship with other countries as well.
Most certainly.
You only have to look at President Biden's totally changed his stance. Lord David Cameron, saying the same thing, more or less. You know, you're not seeing our point of view on this. We're going to have to take other measures. Witness the fact that President Biden is going to try and put this sort of weird pontoon-type aid off the shore of Gaza. So Netanyahu is losing political allies.
He most certainly is. I mean, it's reported that Joe Biden has said some extremely uncomplimentary things about him. And it's also worth noting that we talk about mobs on the street here, where there's a great deal of dissent within Israel itself about his position. And, I mean, up to a point, one could argue he's having sort of allowed the initial Hamas atrocity to take place, he has to he's got to win, otherwise he's going to be out. He's got his own political future to consider. And so at this stage, I have to say, things are looking extremely bleak, and they're likely to become a great deal more bleak. And as you rightly say, Benjamin Netanyahu is fast running out of friends.
OK, Peter Spencer, thanks for joining us. No doubt we'll be having the same conversation in another month's time. Thank you very much.
9:32, now to a completely different problem to solve. XL bully dogs are now the third most stolen breed in the UK.
Yeah, and across the UK, dog thefts are up 6% year on year, and the last year with just over 200 dogs being stolen.
Now, there are reports saying that adult XL bully dogs have been sold on the black market for 15 grand. 15,000 puppies, and puppies for some £5,000.
I think it's actually 2,000 dogs that have been stolen, not 200. And joining us now to discuss this is Pet Detective and Police Liaison Officer Wayne May to tell us more. Wayne, welcome to the studio. Thank you very much. This is a serious topic, and it really, really impacts people emotionally when their dog is stolen. A part of their life is stolen, yet it's going through the roof.
Yeah, to be honest, it's always been a serious problem, and year on year, we're getting increasing dog thefts across the country, and they're getting higher and higher and impacting families everywhere.
And it's surprising when you look at the breeds on this. Like, I would have thought small dogs you can, like, I don't know, almost stick in your jacket, but the breeds that are being stolen are quite different.
They are, yeah. I spoke to Direct Line Pet Insurance earlier on this week, and the latest figures show that pugs, French bulldogs and American XL bullies are the top three stolen over the last year. Obviously, when the data was collected, wasn't where there was going to be a ban on XL bullies. However, at the time, the criminal fraternity capitalised on the amount that these dogs are being sold for. So if you can imagine a dog being sold between £5,000 and £10,000, and with the XL bullies, colour variations demanded higher prices. The thieves capitalised on this, and they steal your dogs to either resell or to breed from.
I mean, as Martin said, you'd expect the ones that are being stolen would be little fluffy things like the one I've got, who would go to anyone. It can't be easy to steal an XL bully dog.
In theory, no, but the people that steal these dogs are doing it all the time. And
they're doing it industrially, aren't they?
I'm quite aware that, you know, they're jumping into your garden and taking the dog within 7 seconds. You know, we've got CCTV footage that we submitted to the police to show this. You know, they're so adept at doing it. You know, during the pandemic, we was looking at criminal gangs. Now we're looking at opportunist theft.
I need to ask you quickly, Wayne, what can we do to stop this?
Keep your insurance up to date, mark ship details up to date, and the law has to change. Unfortunately, if you have your dog stolen today, it's the equivalent to having your microwave or your mountain bike stolen.
You get a crime reference number, please don't.
And that's it. And you know, if you get caught stealing a dog, you get a slap on the wrist. What needs to change is the actual law, a crime in its own right. Tomorrow, I can go and get like for like for my mountain bike. I can replace my dog.
No, you can't. No, not if it's a much-loved pet.
Great stuff. Wayne, mate, thank you for joining us and highlighting an important issue. Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.
OK, it's 9:35. Here's a big one. How old is too old to get married? We'll be answering that question. Well, we'll be trying to next.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Should we put tobacco-style warnings on ultra-processed foods? Boris Johnson is calling on the government to do this. In this Daily Mail column, the former Prime Minister says that people don't know what they're feeding their families and there's too many extra ingredients. That's why I'm asking, should we put tobacco-style warnings on ultra-processed food? Well, joining me now to discuss, Steve Miller, former presenter of Fat Families, Helena Davidson, campaigner and policy expert at the Vegan Society. Right, so I'm going to start with you. Steve Miller, what do you think?
Oh, I'm applauding Boris today. Good on you, mate. And the reason for that is we know that the research on the warnings on cigarettes, I should say, when those warnings were visual, they worked very well. The second reason on a practical level is that we need to stop looking and listening before we start, grazing and putting things in the trolley. And the third thing is that, these kind of signs, or these warnings, I should say, are kind of hypnotic. They trigger the emotion. So they're much more likely to get people to think and maybe resist.
Yeah, so at the Vegan Society, we're broadly in favour of increasing consumer knowledge when it comes to the nutritional value of people's food. But I think it's important to mention that ultra-processed food isn't an issue that's exclusive to vegans. And whilst most meat alternatives will fall into the ultra-processed food category, it largely depends on how we're going to look at how UPFs are going to be assessed, because vegan alternatives that fall under ultra-processed foods, they're actually on average healthier than meat products or ultra-processed foods that contain animal products. Really? So I think it depends on how we look at it. We might have to take a closer look at the nutritional profile of individual foods rather than the level of processing.
Hello again, 9:39, and you're watching and listening to Breakfast this morning with Anne and Martin.
Yeah, now, and here we go. Here's a fun one. Media mogul Rupert Murdoch plans to marry his girlfriend Elena Zukova at the grand old age of 92.
Yes, they've made the official announcement that they are engaged. Now, a lot of people think that Murdoch is actually too old to be getting married again. But others say that if it makes him happy, why shouldn't they? Age shouldn't be a barrier.
Yeah, and we've been asking today, can you be simply too old to tie the knot?
Well, joining us now is celebrity divorce lawyer Vanessa Lloyd-Platt. Very good morning to you, Vanessa. How long do you give this one then?
Well, if he wants to be like Henry VIII, not long, because this will be his fifth marriage, and if he wants to get in a final sixth one, then not long. But he is going to be 93 on Monday. So he's actually going to be marrying when he's 93 years of age. But luck to the guy. He can afford to pay the divorce settlements, so why not? I mean, as a divorce lawyer, of course, I would question why he needs to get married again. Why doesn't he just live with her? But, each to their own. And if that's what makes him happy, he obviously likes having a wife on his arm.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a bit concerned myself, as I keep saying, about making it through the wedding night. At 93, you've got to be careful, but, be a good way to go, I guess. You go with a smile on your face. But on a serious point, it has implications for the family as well, doesn't it? Because as you said, it's like, what attracted you to the multi-millionaire Rupert Murdoch? The kids, no doubt, will be raising their eyebrows about what it might mean for the Wonga.
Well, they have in the past, and of course he's got 6 children, and 3 of the children that he had from his marriage from Anna Torf objected like mad to the children from Wendy Deng having a share of the asset. So there is going to be some consternation in the family about why is he doing this again and what will it mean for them? And is he going to give any shares or any voting rights to his new wife-to-be? What is the implications? Now, Rupert Murdoch is a very clever man. He's not silly, and he will more than probably have a prenup where he determines quite clearly what will happen if, God forbid, this one goes wrong. With Wendy Deng, the prenup he had with her said that she would get $1 million for every year of marriage. Well, he's not going to have many years to pay out, is he? Let's face it.
But he's, I mean, famously, he's a businessman. And it was always said, wasn't it, that Aristotle Onassis went into his marriage with Jackie Kennedy, not so much about romance, but it was sort of like a business deal. And I just wonder if Rupert Murdoch is a businessman when it comes to these women he wants to marry, or whether he's an old softy at heart.
He might be an old softy. He does fall in love very easily, but unlike Henry VIII, he doesn't dispatch them with cutting off their heads, etc. He sends emails to end the relationship, but he certainly did when it came to Jerry Hall. Now, I think there is consternation amongst the family members. They want their dad to be happy, of course, and he retired as the main person in News Corp and handed over to Lachlan. But there's still concern. What will this mean? But he will have a prenup. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And she's a very wealthy lady in her own right. Not as wealthy as him, but she also has a lot of very important connections. And he's a man who loves connections. So is that the reason? We don't know. He dispatched the engaged lady that he was engaged to, Anna Smith, and Leslie Smith, sorry, very quickly because he felt potentially her religious views were too much for him. But I think a lot of family objection to that one. So the family seem to be sort of okay with him getting married, but I'm sure they will drag him off to the nearest lawyer's office to make sure there is a watertight prenup.
See, Vanessa, I don't know if you're connected to the Murdoch camp, but £1 million a year, I'm starting to see the appeal. If this one doesn't last, I think I'd like to marry Mr. Murdoch myself. What do you reckon?
I wouldn't. Would you, Vanessa?
He's tight, darling. But he's a lovely man. He's very, very intelligent, and he does fall in love all the time. And it's quite sweet if you're a romantic.
I know. I mean, I think at 92, why not? If you've still got that twinkle in your eye, you know, why not? For heaven's sake, it's better than being lonely. And as you said at the beginning, he probably just loves to have a lovely woman on his arm, doesn't he?
He does. And he probably has a portable defibrillator with him wherever he goes as well.
All right, great bit of fun. Thanks for joining us. Celebrity divorce lawyer, excellent, Vanessa Lloyd-Platt. Thank you very much. Great fun.
Yeah, there you are. Sorry, if you can hear my stomach rumbling, which you probably could, because you could yesterday, apparently. Can you hear it over there?
I can, but
yeah.
I was trying to be polite. But
no. You might as well own up, I think.
You got a cheese sandwich down you, that helped?
I did, yes, and it has helped. Could do with a big breakfast fry-up now. Yeah, and you're looking forward to a pint down the pub, aren't you?
I'm going for a pint, yeah.
Anyway, do stay with us, because Stephanie Tecci and Aidan McGee will be in the studio for a roundup of all the sports and show business news coming up in a moment.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school, and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true, I said, you know, you may adopt the church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind, for which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me, but I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing.
It's an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position?
Well, he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it. In a sense, I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess. Not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head, but you know, he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously through no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to Prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to Prevent for essentially teaching.
Welcome back to 9:48. We're on the final furlong. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin.
Yes, and Stephanie and Aidan have joined us, and that's lovely to see you.
Nice
and
to see
I
you
just
both,
wondered what you thought, because we've been talking about it all through the break as well. It's about Rupert Murdoch getting married at 92. Yeah. Is that too old? Is it even icky to think about romance at the age of 92?
No, I think romance should be with you until the day you die. I don't think there's any age limit where you should get married or stop getting married. But with Rupert Murdoch, fifth time, it's a bit too much.
Well,
I think,
had a long life.
You know, after 2 or 3 times, he must just realise, look, marriage doesn't work for me. And he's quite wealthy, so, for instance...
Quite wealthy.
If it doesn't work out with this woman, he's going to have to pay her off. So I just think, in that sense, I don't agree with him getting married in the sense where clearly he has a track record where it hasn't.
I mean, as Vanessa Lloyd-Platt was saying, the lawyer, she was saying he obviously wants to be married because she would have said, why don't you just live together?
Yeah.
He likes being married.
But it doesn't work for him.
Well, you say that, but I mean, his marriages have lasted...
He might just need a wedding for a partner or a wife for different phases of his life. I always think that if you get married in your, I don't know, mid-20s or something, then you've got to be really lucky for your interests and your views and your outlook on life to stay aligned for 70-odd years.
Yeah.
That's asking a hell of a lot, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, that's the problem. But I do give kudos to him in the sense where he's holding up traditional values and he does want to kind of make their wedding legal and in the eyes of God. I think that's a beautiful thing to...
I think there's a certain merit in, though, that phrase, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome.
Well, I've known instances in the Premier League. I won't mention names, but there was a player who was going a bit wayward in his career. They got him back on the straight and narrow, but they said it would only be a short-term thing unless he got married. There was a board meeting at Premier League Football Club about 20 years ago, find player X a wife, and they did it. And they found a woman who was 6 years older than him. He's now married with 4 children. They've been together It absolutely worked. He went on to play for England, and he would have been... had that not happened, people who in the know who tell me they know him tell me that he probably would have ended up in non-league.
I've heard older people say that, you know, what that young man needs is to get married and have a couple of kids.
This was a classic
responsibility.
Yeah, this was a case in point, seriously.
Yeah, and I wonder how they found her and how they introduced them and made it happen.
It happened in the Players' Lounge after the next match.
Oh.
He married into money.
She was wealthy.
She was, and they needed someone. They said, right, I don't want to use the exact words they used.
By fame or
no, exactly, and I mean it's actually a short-term thing as well. The actual football he was done by about the time he was 35. It's a very short career. However, they needed somebody specifically, I won't use the exact words, the terminology they used, but it said they wanted someone who wasn't going to take any nonsense from him.
Yes.
And I tell you what, I saw him in the Trafford Centre many years later, and I thought, that worked.
I think we can imagine, we could probably fill in the blanks and imagine that phrase. We have to talk about Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
Absolutely hundreds and hundreds of comments coming in. Fair to say...
It's the Meghan effect, Martin.
It's fair to say, you know, she's been moaning once again about getting abused, this time on International Women's Day, and the comments are, the world's smallest violins, get a life.
Yeah, well, it's Meghan. You know, she has a very fractured relationship with the public, and, you know, she knows that. Even if she doesn't go on social media, she knows that people are talking about her, and sometimes she should address this. And maybe there are some people who've criticised Meghan online who might now think before they press send on a tweet or an Instagram post, because, again, she is a human being. She goes through mental health, but some people say she brings it on herself.
Well, yes, I think... You constantly see her talking about mental health issues, quite rightly so.
Yes.
But the worst thing she could have done for her mental health, especially when she was pregnant, was engage with all this nonsense on social media.
How are you ever going to win in that situation?
Yeah.
You know, you've got strangers just feeling they're in an environment where they think it's perfectly okay.
No wonder she feels hated and got at if she's reading those horrible, horrible tweets.
Aidan, could I just point out to a fellow gentleman on the panel, what's really fascinating for me is that on International Men's Day it came out the vast majority of abuse she's been getting has been from other women.
I know. Well, I mean, look, I remember making a mistake myself in a previous role. It's a bit of a gaffe. It wasn't anything too serious. It's more of a funny thing. But, I mean, I just remember for 2 days the heat that I got for... I'm not even big on social media. And yet just the abuse that came in. People just felt like they owned me for a couple of days and they could say whatever they wanted. And eventually I had to just switch off. And that was for men, women and anything in between.
But, of course, she doesn't have to engage with it, but she does need her social media status.
She does.
Of course,
She's preparing to get back in the limelight with her blog, and she knows her and Harry have a slate of projects coming up. She is going to be in the public eye. So in that sense, she does need to say what she's thinking about, and hopefully she can put it to bed. But clearly, based on the comments we're getting... She just shouldn't read it. It's what you said earlier, Martin, is you do it not passively the other way. You are broadcasting it, but you don't have to read what comes back.
Well, that's what Nigel Farage has always said. He gets so much abuse. All he ever does is projects outwards, never reeds any replies, never replies or engages with anybody below the line. Just put it out and ignore it. Surely that's what she should be saying, especially to young women.
It's easier said than done. You know, even for all of us here on TV, sometimes you do get curious to find out what people are saying.
Everyone wants validation as well. It's normal.
You know, you just want to go through it. Sometimes it's hard just to totally switch off, I think.
Oh, I think it's quite easy.
I don't know. I suppose you just have to be disciplined enough not to read it, because they always say don't believe your own publicity, don't they? So don't believe the lovely, wonderful stuff that comes in, and equally don't believe the horrible stuff.
Exactly.
Otherwise, just don't read
in sport, there's an old adage, you know, you're never quite as good as people think you are, you're never quite as bad as people think you are either. I think that's very, very, very pertinent now in an era when mental health is spoken about so much.
Well, it's Mother's Day tomorrow, so tomorrow, that's what we'll want to talk about a fair amount. If you've got any interesting plans, then do let us know. Just know,
I'm going to try and get it over and done with and watch Forest and Brighton.
Yeah, he wants to get Mother's Day over and done with really early, so that he can go down the pub and watch the Forest do their thing.
Exactly. Bring it down the boozer.
Anyway, that's it from us, but we will join you again tomorrow morning. Peter and Ellie are here, just getting limbered up, taking social media pictures, actually. I'll be with you in a moment.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest forecast for GB News from the Met Office. It's going to be a dull weekend, a cold feel as well with brisk easterly winds and spells of rain or showers moving across the country. We start the day with a lot of cloud cover, outbreaks of rain moving through parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, into northern England, eventually eastern Scotland seeing showers carried into the east, and we're going to see outbreaks of rain also arriving into the eastern parts of Northern Ireland. Driest and brightest weather towards the southeast with some sunny spells, western Scotland as well. And after a chilly start, things will warm up a touch, although it will stay on the cold side in the east with the brisk wind coming from the North Sea. Into the evening, further spells of rain or showers, some heavy at times across the southwest as well as into Wales, northern England. And then the southeast gets a bit of a soaking as a band of persistent rain moves through, and that spreads across much of the east of the UK overnight, a few showers continuing further west. Of course, with the cloud and the rain and the breeze overnight, it's going to be mostly frost-free, although there will be a touch of frost across western Scotland where we do get some prolonged clear spells. But it's an unsettled start to the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover, spells of rain for many places, especially across Scotland, into much of England, East Wales and Northern Ireland. The brightest weather actually by the afternoon will be across the southwest, although still the potential for a few showers here. And it's going to feel cold, with temperatures in many places staying at 6 to 8 Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the